Imagine being the designated talentless disappointment of the world's most terrifying magic family, completely incapable of using even a single drop of mana. But then, you suddenly awaken a legendary magic circle, and instead of acting cool, you start cackling like a certified anime villain. Meanwhile, your grandfather, who is basically a walking nuclear bomb, is currently having an absolute blood pressure crisis and threatening to turn an entire forest into charcoal. All because you stood him up to play in the dirt and pull weeds. But to understand how this absolute menace turned the ultimate magic family into his personal botanical garden, we need to go back to the beginning. Welcome to House Asteri, the most prestigious magic family in the empire, famous for throwing their own kids into the trash if they don't have magic cheat codes. But a month ago, their useless eldest young master woke up from a coma, screamed some gibberish, and bolted straight into a thunderstorm. The maids thought he was possessed, but when they found him digging in the mud with his bare hands, he held up a single weed. And for the past 30 days, this man has done absolutely nothing but pull weeds from sunrise to sunset. He's living his best cozy farming life while everyone else is playing a high-stakes survival game. But there's a method to his madness. You see, the Asteri family is so ridiculously overpowered they can shoot down birds just by flexing their aura, meaning if you're born talentless here, you're basically a walking target. Down in the servants' quarters, the gossip mill is running at maximum speed. The maids are whispering that the eldest young master failed his magic awakening for the third time, which means his younger brother is basically guaranteed to take over the family. They're convinced the poor guy has finally lost his mind from the sheer stress of being a disappointment. The head butler shows up looking like a discount monocle emoji and demands to know what the fuss is about, so the maids explain that a month ago, the young master woke up from his coma muttering complete gibberish to himself before sprint jumping out of the mansion barefoot in the middle of a torrential downpour. He dropped to his knees in the backyard, clawing at the dirt like a feral raccoon, and when his hands were completely bloody and raw, he lifted a single piece of grass into the air and laughed like a maniac. The butler and the family's terrifying shadow advisor, Sylvia, are just staring in absolute silence. The butler tries to defend him, suggesting it might have been a super rare herb, but the maids are not buying it, because since that fateful night, our guy has been doing absolutely nothing but pulling plants out of the ground. And to be fair, he's actually getting some pretty decent loot notifications. As he dusts off his hands, he notices the shadowy figures watching him from the trees and sighs, realizing being the family disappointment is exhausting. This is Lion Asteri, but in his past life, he was just an ordinary Korean guy named Baek Yi-hyun. He used to be a stressed-out team leader who quit his job on an impulse after his boss went on one too many power trips. With nothing but free time, he logged into a nostalgic MMO he used to play like a sweatlord, only to find some absolute savage had deleted every single one of his max-level characters. Since he had nothing to lose, he made a brand new character, rolled a crafter build, and got blessed with insane returner's luck. He figured he'd just have a nice, peaceful, healing game experience, but that was his very last memory before everything went black. When he opened his eyes, he was inside the game as Lion Asteri, except 50 years had passed since the game's final chapter. Thankfully, he kept his crafting system, which lets him see glowing herbs that are completely invisible to normal NPCs. By pulling enough weeds, he unlocks a herbalist achievement, which rewards him with 1,000 shillings and promises to open an exclusive shop once he hoards enough cash. He realizes that if he keeps grinding, he might actually have a shot at surviving this nightmare. But then, he remembers his current body situation: 3 failed magic awakenings. In a family that literally runs on social Darwinism, a magicless heir is basically waiting to get deleted. He needs to gather enough money to escape this mansion before they decide to permanently retire him. He wonders if he can just bribe his terrifying grandfather, but he needs something incredibly valuable to catch his eye. Suddenly, his gamer senses tingle as he spots a bright blue glowing effect in the bushes. He sprints over, digs it up with perfect form, and pulls out a 3-star red sun fern, which is basically a premium herbal sedative. He's celebrating his lucky pull when a cold voice behind him ruins the vibe. He turns around slowly, his face frozen in mid-celebration. It's Sylvia, the family's advisor, looking like she just crept out of a horror movie. She asks him why he's so obsessed with pulling weeds lately, so Lion, acting totally casual, holds up the 3-star herb and asks if she can see the bright blue light coming off of it. She just stares at the plain green leaves in his hand, her face completely flat, convinced the maids were right, and the eldest young master has officially lost his marbles. She taps his head, letting out a dry sigh of disappointment. Lion realizes the glowing system effects are completely invisible to everyone else, which is a massive win for his crafting grind. Sylvia tells him to stop playing in the dirt because his terrifying grandfather is looking for him. Lion's soul almost leaves his body. His grandfather, Asteri, is the literal human embodiment of the capable take-all and has zero chill. He is the worst possible person to meet right now since Lion doesn't even have a bribe prepared yet. But then, he gets a brain blast. He looks at Sylvia with a nervous sweat on his face and asks her to tell his grandfather that he'll drop by later. Meanwhile, in the grand office, Petherick is sitting at his desk listening to reports. He hears that his grandson is still doing yard work and is so annoyed he literally burns his paperwork with his bare hands. The reporter confirms Lion has 0 mana, but is otherwise perfectly healthy. Petherick lets out a massive click of his tongue, his face twisted in pure disgust. He dismisses the servant, wanting to be left alone with his mounting disappointment. Suddenly, Sylvia melts out of the shadows behind his chair. Petherick asks her if she knows what the hell his grandson is playing at, and she calmly explains that the boy is indeed pulling weeds, and has now expanded his search area to the dangerous outer forest. Petherick snaps, yelling that he doesn't care about the gardening club. Sylvia melts back into her shadow portal, leaving Petherick alone with his fury. The old patriarch mutters about his insolent grandson and activates a magical crystal ball to spy on him, expecting to see some secret training. Instead of training, Lion is currently standing inside a massive, state-of-the-art alchemy lab. He's looking at rows of premium beakers and high-grade magical gear, completely shocked by the sheer wealth of his family. He only asked his grandfather for some basic tools to play around with, and the old man sent him equipment worth a literal mansion. But Lion isn't complaining. He opens his system window to get to work. His potion brewing is currently level 1, and he knows he needs to grind his proficiency to unlock better recipes. The system's ranking system goes from apprentice all the way to grandmaster, which is reserved for the top 1% of players. He takes out his gathered herbs, his hands moving with natural gaming muscle memory. His plan is simple. Brew 100 basic potions, drink them all himself, and max out his levels. He hovers his hand over the steaming cauldron and activates his system skill, causing a bright gold light to erupt from the pot. The magical ingredients liquefy and fuse together perfectly, pouring smoothly into a clean glass vial. The system chimes, confirming he successfully brewed a low-grade health potion on his first try. He looks at the shiny red bottle, proud of his basic tutorial tier achievement. He immediately pops the cap and chugs the potion like he's trying to cure a massive hangover. His health bar goes up, and his alchemist achievement progress ticks to 1 out of 100. He slams the empty bottle down, a wild grin spreading across his face. He mutters to himself that his grandfather better get ready, because the ultimate bribe is coming. For the next several hours, Lion goes into full-on sweatlord mode, brewing and drinking potions until the room is covered in empty glass. By morning, the sun is shining through the window, and Lion looks like a shell of a human being. His health is permanently stuck at 100%, and forcing himself to chug healing syrup is literal torture at this point. He holds up one last vial, gagging as he forces the final drop down his throat. But the grind pays off, the system chimes, his alchemy hits level 4, and he unlocks a brand new high-tier recipe. He opens the details, his eyes scanning the new blueprint. A massive smile returns to his face as he realizes this is the golden ticket he was looking for. He starts throwing new rare herbs into his pot, the boiling liquid releasing a sweet, refreshing aroma. He remembers that when he was searching for herbs, he spent a lot of time thinking about what Petherick would actually want. Giving a mana potion to a legendary grand mage is like bringing a cup of water to a tsunami, and a health potion is useless when he has elite healers on standby. But a potion that cures mental fatigue? That is a completely different story. Petherick is a workaholic patriarch who runs the entire family with 0 breaks. Even if he reinforces his physical body with magic, his brain is still subjected to constant corporate-level burnout. Lion snaps his gloves on, ready to brew the ultimate anti-stress juice. The blue liquid swirls in the cauldron, glowing with a beautiful starry effect. In the original MMO, this potion was treated as complete junk loot because players didn't suffer from mental fatigue. But in a living, breathing world, this stuff is basically liquid gold for tired old men. He places his hand on the glass distiller and channels his magic extraction skill. The bright blue liquid rises into the air, swirling around him like a miniature galaxy. As the potion forms, Lion gets a sudden rush of his own happy memories from his past life, remembering his high school graduation and the rare moments of genuine peace before he entered the corporate meat grinder. The potion is successfully bottled, and the system confirms it restores mental energy by forcing the drinker to recall their happiest memories. Lion is shocked to see it's a 2-star quality potion, which usually requires level 8 proficiency. Just inhaling the fumes clears his head instantly, making him realize how insanely powerful this bribe is going to be. The sheer quality of the potion triggers his system talent, which activates with a deafening hum. A massive magic circle forms beneath his feet, his long blonde hair whipping in the wind as raw mana begins to circulate through his body. He clenches his fist, feeling the warm, pulsing energy of magic for the very first time. While Lion is inside celebrating his legendary upgrade, the camera pans to the door. A shadowy young man is standing in the doorway, listening to Lion's maniacal, echoing laughter. His face is hidden in the shadows, looking extremely concerned about his cousin's sanity. He slowly steps backward and walks away down the hallway, leaving the crazy young master to his victory screech. Lion throws himself back into his plush chair, feeling absolutely on top of the world. He closes his eyes, dreaming of his smooth escape from the family now that he has money, magic, and a perfect bribe. But as he's relaxing, a sudden cold sweat breaks out on the back of his neck. He sits up straight, a blank, horrified expression on his face as his brain finally processes the timeline. He remembers that his terrifying, fire-breathing grandfather Petherick has been waiting in his office for over 12 hours and is currently having a literal nuclear meltdown because his useless grandson stood him up to go play with some test tubes. The heavy atmosphere in the patriarch's study is thick enough to cut with a knife. Patrick is standing by the window, staring out like a man whose patience expired about 3 business days ago. This is not just any grumpy old noble. This is Patrick Asteri, a literal living legend, a key member of the former Heroes Party, and a man who could genuinely decide to start his own sovereign nation by Tuesday if he got bored enough. He is looking at the reports and wondering why on earth his fragile, talentless grandson is pushing his body to the absolute limit. It is not like House Asteri is running low on cash or influence. Patrick is trying to hide his anxiety behind a wall of pure, unadulterated irritation. Sylvia gently reminds him that the young master actually looked incredibly happy while he was locked away working on those potions. But Patrick is not buying it, clutching his head in sheer frustration. He knows the brutal reality of this world. Lion has already survived 3 consecutive mana shocks, and in this universe, surviving even one of those is like winning the lottery twice in a row. Before the old man can spiral any further into his feelings, a polite knock breaks the tension. Our guy finally decides to show up, sporting a sweat drop and his best "please do not incinerate me" smile. Lion takes a bow, immediately offering his deepest apologies for making the head of the house wait. Patrick does not look amused, folding his arms and asking why he took his sweet time getting here. Lion takes a quiet breath, preparing to launch his ultimate survival strategy. It is time to deploy the classic, weaponized pity play. He looks his grandfather dead in the eye and admits that everyone in the family knows he has 0 talent for magic. He gently cuts off Sylvia's attempt to comfort him, showing he is perfectly fine with the harsh truth. He explains that his fragile body simply could not accept mana, and deep down he was terrified that the moment he accepted his weakness, there would be no place left for him in House Asteri. But then, he pulls out the glowing blue potion, sliding it onto the desk. He claims this bottle is the result of him finally accepting his limits and working hard to bring pride to the family name. He flashes a soft, incredibly sincere smile, telling Patrick he noticed how exhausted his grandfather has been all this time. Patrick's eyes widen, completely caught off guard by the sheer audacity of this emotional attack. He looks at Lion and realizes something is fundamentally different about the boy's entire presence. He stares down at the beautifully glowing blue liquid on his desk. The realization hits him like a truck. His grandson spent all those sleepless nights brewing a cure specifically for him. Internally, Patrick's tough guy exterior is absolutely melting into pure, soft-boiled grandfatherly joy, but his massive noble pride instantly kicks in to block the emotional damage. He tells himself that a simple potion could never work on someone who has surpassed human limits, while Lion keeps selling the act. Lion tells him to drink it whenever he has some spare time, and Patrick, trying to look as stern as possible, dismisses him. Our guy bows politely, thoroughly pleased that he just managed to survive a meeting with a walking volcano. The massive double doors close, leaving the room in quiet suspense. Sylvia immediately calls him out, pointing out that he looks absolutely thrilled. Patrick scoffs, trying to pretend he is completely unfazed, but he is already picking up the bottle. He holds the glowing blue liquid up to the light, noting there is something strangely familiar about it. Sylvia's eyes narrow, offering to run a high-level magic analysis to make sure it is completely safe. Patrick declines, stating he wants to experience his grandson's genuine sincerity exactly as it is. Sylvia bows gracefully and dissolves into a pool of dark shadow magic to give him some privacy. Patrick sits alone, swirling the potion and trying to remember the last time Lion actually gave him a gift. He has to admit the craftsmanship is shockingly clean, far beyond what any normal beginner should be capable of producing. Telling himself it probably won't have much of an effect anyway, he pops the cork and takes a sip. He drinks the entire bottle in one go, and immediately the world around him seems to quiet down. A wave of absolute unprecedented peace washes over his entire body. Fragments of warm, long-forgotten memories begin to drift gently through his mind. His heavy eyelids flutter closed, and he falls into a deep, peaceful sleep. It is a short, fleeting nap, but the quality of the rest is something he has not experienced in decades. The dream he has is remarkably sweet, free from the endless burdens of running a magic empire. His eyes slowly blink open as the light filters through the window. He realizes he actually fell asleep at his desk, but there is no lingering fatigue, no heavy sadness, and no anxiety. He looks down at the empty glass bottle in his hand, completely speechless. The chronic, splitting headache that had plagued his mind for decades has completely vanished. He looks out at the bright, clear sky, feeling lighter than he has in 50 years. He lets out a soft laugh, muttering that the boy is just as stubborn as his parent. Patrick decides right then and there that he will find a way to permanently fix Lion's fragile body and stop those mana shocks. He looks out at the horizon, silently promising that they will live a long, peaceful life together. Meanwhile, out in the courtyard, Lion suddenly gets a massive case of the goosebumps, wondering who is planning to ruin his life. And the servants are currently running a full-blown gossip circle, convinced that Lion is on his actual deathbed. One of the valets is literally laughing his head off, claiming Lion's weed pulling was just him looking for a place to bury himself. But his comedy special is cut short by a massive thud that nearly sends him out of his skin. The maids immediately scramble back to work, scattering like cockroaches when the light turns on. Hannah, the loyal red-haired maid, is absolutely fuming as she talks to her fellow servant. She complains that another one of Lion's personal attendants has quietly packed up and quit. She is furious at their lack of loyalty, especially since Lion was always an easy master who never caused any trouble. She rants about how ungrateful they are, completely missing the terrifying shadow looming right behind her. She turns around and nearly passes away on the spot when she sees who is standing there. It is Sylvia, wearing a beautifully creepy smile, politely asking to hear every single detail about these rumors. Back in the grand study, the morning sun is shining brightly on the Asteria estate. Sylvia glides into the room, apologizing for her slight delay. She casually mentions she was just taking care of some minor family affairs, which definitely means some gossiping servants had a very bad morning. Patrick is sitting at his desk, looking remarkably refreshed, but he has a slight bead of sweat on his face. Sylvia places the empty potion bottle on the desk, asking him to take a closer look using a highly specific spell. A brilliant pink magical array manifests around the glass, glowing with intense, ancient energy. Sylvia's stoic face completely cracks as she realizes this is not a potion a normal human should ever be able to brew. She looks incredibly tense, holding the bottle like it is a live explosive. She asks if this could possibly be the legendary Hero's potion. Cue the massive lore dump. 50 years ago, a legendary hero ended the war with the demons and vanished without a trace. A figure so powerful that no dungeon could hold him, and even the gods hesitated to stand in his way. And Sylvia's hands tighten, a deep, hidden desperation leaking into her thoughts as she wonders if this person can break her chains. She clutches her dress, thinking that the only person capable of finding the magical contract hidden deep in this family's labyrinth is him. Patrick tries to stay rational, pointing out that if it were truly the hero's potion, the effects would have been way more explosive. He narrows his eyes, trying to convince himself of the obvious. There is simply no logical way that his frail, talentless grandson could be the legendary savior of humanity, but Patrick is already hooked, admitting he wants to ask Lion for a much stronger version of the drug. He tells Sylvia he wants her to experience the same incredible mental liberation, noting she has lived in chronic lethargy for hundreds of years. Sylvia lets out a soft, highly amused chuckle at his concern. Patrick looks at her, slightly bewildered by her sudden laughter. She smiles, reminding him that worrying about a witch is the most useless thing in the world, given her 1,000-year lifespan and immense magic. She tells him there is no need to put unnecessary pressure on his adorable little grandson. But she gracefully bows, admitting she will happily accept the kind gesture. Patrick watches her go, quietly calling her his sister, showing just how deep and complex this family's secrets really run. Later that day, Lion is called back to the study, looking at his grandfather's incredibly serious expression. Patrick tries to play it cool, denying that he is worried about anything at all. Lion starts running down a list of hilarious diagnostic questions, asking if he did not sleep well or if he is suffering from a severe lack of physical exercise. He even asks if Patrick's advanced age is making it hard for him to digest greasy food, which instantly earns him a popping head vein. Patrick snaps, but when Lion asks if it is because of the potion, he has to flinch and admit it is correct. He gets straight to the point, demanding to know if Lion can brew a potion of even higher quality than the last one. Lion's brain immediately goes into overdrive as a cold sweat breaks out. Internally, he is panicking because his current gathering limits make finding high-grade herbs nearly impossible, and the last batch was pure luck. But as a former corporate worker, he knows you never say no to the main investor when they are showing active interest. He locks in, telling Patrick it is possible, but politely asks what his grandfather intends to use it for. Patrick casually explains that he wants to give it as a gift to the head maid, Sylvia. And just like that, Lion's modern, anime-brained imagination completely takes over. He instantly envisions a dramatic, sparkling late-life romance between his stern grandfather and the creepy shadow maid. He starts nodding along, deeply moved by the idea of an old man trying to give his secret crush the absolute best. Even though Patrick's internal monologue is screaming that this is absolutely not a romance, Lion is already fully committed to the bit. Determined to support his grandfather's imaginary love life, Lion begs for a 2-week deadline to deliver a masterpiece. Patrick looks completely shocked by the massive delay, having expected something much sooner. Seeing the old man's disappointment, Lion immediately starts bargaining against himself. He promises to deliver the ultimate high-grade potion in just 1 single week, running out of the room like a man on a mission. He is absolutely thrilled, celebrating that he has officially secured his grandfather's favor and backing. Patrick is left standing there, reaching out to stop him, completely speechless at how fast the kid just bolted. But once Lion gets outside, reality hits him like a bucket of ice water. He realizes he has no idea how to actually make a 3-star potion, and grinding low-level potions won't level him up fast enough. He decides to check his system's shilling shop to see if there are any cheap materials available. A golden, ancient UI menu pops up, revealing a preview for items under 100,000 shillings. He looks at the prices and his jaw literally drops. 10,000 shillings for a pair of sharp scissors or a basic fishing rod. He is outraged, wondering if the old key is gold-plated to justify that kind of absurd price tag. He checks the cooking tab and finds out that even basic magic seasoning costs 10,000 shillings, meaning he is completely broke. Realizing the cash shop is a total paywall for now, he is forced to rely on conventional gathering methods. He knows there is a hard limit to how many high-grade herbs he can dig up using his bare hands. To get the rare stuff, he needs a massive upgrade. He needs quality tools. We cut to a bustling smithy on the outskirts of the estate, the sound of rhythmic hammering echoing through the air. A massive, muscular dwarf is working the anvil, sparks flying with every single strike. His assistant runs in, yelling at him to hurry up and come outside because a major customer has just arrived. The dwarf grumbles, thoroughly annoyed at being interrupted, but his ears perk up at the words, "big spender." He steps out of the forge, ready to deal with some demanding noble. He stops dead in his tracks, staring at the visitor in utter disbelief. Lion is standing there, radiating a massive, glittering young master aura, wearing clothes that scream old money. He politely asks if he can rent out the forge to try his own hand at smithing. Before the dwarf can laugh him out of the shop, Lion reaches into his coat. He drops a massive, overflowing sack of glittering gold coins onto the table, asking if this is generous enough to secure the lease. He was looking at the basic shop tools, and his gamer eyes immediately flagged them as complete garbage. He realized that if you want a job done right, you do not buy overpriced common gear from the local market, you build it yourself. Which brings us back to him flashing a bag of gold that could probably buy a small village. It is the ultimate shut up and take my money move. The assistant Sean is panicking because his brother Mudu is not known for his customer service skills, especially with wealthy nobles. Sean actually tries to push the money back, warning our guy that he is being way too naive. He thinks Lion is just a sheltered, fragile rich kid who is about to get scammed by the local system. Lion, of course, just smiles his classic corporate manipulator smile. Then, the big boss himself steps out. Mudu, a dwarf. In this world, they are basically cheat code crafters who can grab live coals with their bare hands. Mudu looks at this scrawny blonde kid and demands to know his name. The moment our guy says Asteri, Sean's soul literally leaves his body. Because to the public, Lion is the infamous talentless nutjob of the ruling household. But Mudu does not care about noble politics. He tells Sean to set up a spot for this weird kid. He rolls out before Lion can even ask for his name, showing absolute zero respect for the nobility. Sean explains that his brother's name is Millionth Mudun, which is a wild name to carry, so they just call him Mudu. Sean leads him inside to show him around the facility. The workshop is massive, filled with high-grade anvils and tools. Sean is proudly explaining how their supply chain works, but Lion is not listening. His system eyes are scanning the finished tools on the racks, and he notices a massive contradiction. The equipment is perfect, the dwarf's technique is flawless, but the actual output quality is hovering somewhere near absolute zero. Before he can ask, his gamer senses tingle. He feels a weird heat source behind him. A blue system window pops up. A lesser fire spirit is literally crying on his screen, asking for help. Lion casually asks Sean if the forge's fire has always been this pathetic. Sean is taken aback, admitting that the firepower has definitely taken a massive hit recently. Mudu overhears this from the corner, his eyes narrowing as he demands to know how a random noble kid could possibly see that. Lion looks him dead in the eye and drops the most deadpan answer possible. The fire told him. Mudu instantly drops whatever he is holding and grabs our guy by the arm. He kicks Sean out of the room, realizing this eccentric young master might actually be their only hope. The door slams, leaving the two of them alone in the heat of the forge. Mudu drops the tough guy act and asks if Lion can actually see the spirit. Lion admits he can. Mudu asks if he can fix it, and Lion gives him a very casual probably. This is where the power dynamic completely flips. Mudu is so desperate that he promises to personally teach Lion blacksmithing if he can resolve this, and then he drops the real prize, priority ordering rights for any of Lion's future commissions. Lion's eyes light up. In a world where high-grade gear takes months to order, having a master dwarf blacksmith on speed dial is a massive advantage. He accepts the deal instantly. He walks over to the fading flame, his system interface scanning the spirit's status. Mudu sighs, explaining that he worked himself to the bone to build this forge, but the fire spirit suddenly ran out of gas. Without the spirit's blessing, manual heating is ruining their steel, and dwarves cannot communicate with spirits to find out why. He is looking at Lion like a desperate gacha player hoping for a 5-star pull. Lion translates the spirit's complaint. It says it is extremely thirsty. Mudu's brilliant dwarf brain immediately suggests pouring a bucket of water on the fire spirit. Lion has to explain very patiently that pouring water on a fire spirit is generally considered a bad idea if you want it to keep living. Mudu panics, promising to give him his absolute masterpiece if he can just save the shop. He is dead serious, looking like his entire life's work is on the line, and that is the exact moment Lion's inner scammer smiles. He shakes the dwarf's hand, locking in the contract. Night falls over the territory, and while everyone else is sleeping, our guy is pulling unpaid overtime in a medieval fantasy world. The corporate grind truly never ends. His system screen confirms the spirit is suffering from extreme dehydration due to overwork. He realizes that even magical fire spirits are not safe from the horrors of a toxic workplace. Fortunately, Lion spent 30 days pulling weeds, so he has the perfect counter. Aqua rosemary. He opens his system recipes and finds the aqua rosemary oil formula. Normally, eating this herb raw is like drinking a cup of seawater, but with some basic alchemy, it turns into a premium energy drink for fire spirits. He brews the oil and pours it onto the flame. The spirit immediately starts chugging it down, but the little guy is still thirsty, demanding more. Lion has to go full bartender, cooking up batch after batch. Finally, after a massive cooking session, the spirit lets out a satisfied belch, its flame roaring back to life. The system pops up, rewarding Lion with a massive 30% boost to his spirit communion experience. Mudu bursts through the doors, completely ecstatic to see his forge glowing with healthy, vibrant flames again. He runs over to thank his savior, but his face suddenly goes pale. Lion is standing there looking like a Victorian child who just caught a cold, trembling. He tries to play it cool, claiming he is just a little tired from pulling an all-nighter. And then he faceplants directly onto the stone floor, completely unconscious. Mudu screams, convinced he just let the Grand Duke's grandson die in his shop. The next morning, the chimney of the forge is happily puffing away. Inside, we see two incredibly cute green eyes peeking over the edge of a wooden table. It is Sean's younger siblings, and they are currently interrogating our guy while he tries to eat his breakfast. They tell him their names are Golden Branch and Jade Leaf, giggling like absolute rascals. Lion watches them, suddenly remembering his own younger sibling in this world, a prickly kid who apparently hated his guts. He shrugs it off, figuring that as long as he stays away from the main estate, he will never have to deal with family drama anyway. Mudu's wife Leia rushes in, telling the kids to stop bothering the noble guest while he is trying to recover. Lion chuckles, telling the kids his actual name is Lion. The little boy decides young master sounds way cooler, so they are going to stick with that, which Lion finds pretty amusing. Leah chases the screaming toddlers out of the dining room, apologizing for the absolute chaos. Lion tells her it is perfectly fine, compliments her cooking, and digs back into his soup. Leah admits she was terrified when Mudu carried his limp body into the house this morning. She is deeply grateful that he risked his own health to save their family business, but Lion insists that a warm bed and a good meal make them perfectly even. The door opens, and Mudu steps in, looking soot-stained and exhausted. The kids immediately jump all over him, giggling that their dad's face is covered in coal dust again. Mudu smiles at his family, then turns to Lion, telling him that if he has finished eating, they have some work to do. He has a very determined look on his face, showing he is ready to keep his end of the bargain. They walk outside into the bright morning sun. Mudu shows him a custom-made wooden message board. He explains that if they are ever too busy, Lion can just write down his orders here, and they will deliver them directly to his door. But that is just the preview. Mudu leads him back into the forge. Lion's eyes widen as he looks at the center of the room. There is a massive, neatly stacked mountain of high-grade iron ingots waiting for him. Mudu explains that he prepared all the materials in advance so Lion would not ruin his weak body smelting raw ore from scratch. Lion is genuinely touched by the dwarf's thoughtfulness, rolling up his sleeves and asking to start the lesson immediately. Mudu smiles, picking up his hammer to demonstrate the absolute basics of dwarf blacksmithing. He explains that controlling the temperature of the iron is crucial. Too cold and it cracks, too hot and it melts into useless soup. The newly revived fire spirit pops up, happily heating the metal block to a perfect glowing yellow. Mudu swings his hammer with terrifying force, shaping the blade with surgical precision. He refines the edges, grinds the metal on a whetstone, and firmly attaches a smooth wooden handle to the piece. In about 30 seconds, he presents a flawless, master-grade hoe looking like it was the easiest thing in the world. Lion looks at the mountain of iron and asks if he can use all of it for practice. Mudu tells him to go ahead, but before he can even finish his sentence, Lion grabs a massive armful of iron blocks and dumps them all straight into the furnace like he is throwing firewood. Mudu literally screams in horror. Our guy just gives him a calm, slightly unhinged smile, ready to start the grind. He raises the heavy hammer and strikes. The impact shakes his entire frame. He wipes the sweat from his forehead, realizing that manual labor is significantly harder than pressing buttons in a game menu. A red system window pops up, brutally informing him that his first attempt is a complete, unrecoverable disaster with a 15% completion rate. But our guy has the obsessive mindset of an MMO player. He just smiles and prepares for another round. He heats the metal, swings the hammer, and tries again. The completion rate slowly ticks up to 30, then 40%. The fire spirit watches him, matching its heat perfectly to his rhythm. Lion swings the hammer with absolute focus, pouring every ounce of his remaining stamina into the strike. And then, the glorious system chime rings. Because of his stubborn refusal to yield to failure, he has successfully awakened a brand new talent. Mudu runs over, completely shocked by the sudden shift in Lion's posture and hammer control. He yells that the metal feels completely different now, urging him to finish the shaping. Lion locks in, feeling the metal respond to his new skill. He grinds the blade, sparks flying in a beautiful arc across the anvil. He drives the wooden handle into the socket with one final, decisive blow. And there it is, a 100% masterpiece novice hoe blessed with the energy of the fire spirit. It literally increases his gathering speed and rare item drop rates. Mudu is staring at him like he just witnessed a miracle, laughing that this weird noble kid is an actual genius. He tells Lion to take a break, but Lion has a terrifyingly hyped expression on his face. He demands to learn how to make a sickle next. Mudu's face completely blanks out at the sheer, unbridled madness of this kid, and then he bursts into a massive, booming laugh, absolutely loving the grind set. He promises to teach him everything he knows. By nightfall, our guy is back in the dark forest, holding his newly crafted master tools. He tells his imaginary grandfather to wait, promising his love life will succeed. He steps into the glowing foliage, searching for high-grade ingredients. He spots a target and drives his new hoe into the soil. The system pops up, revealing he just harvested a perfect finger ginseng, an extremely rare stamina-boosting herb. He is amazed by the difference. Having high-grade tools literally unlocks entirely new tiers of rare plants for him to gather. He realizes that if he can just increase his gathering proficiency a little more, a grade 3 potion is practically guaranteed. He crouches down to dig up another glowing root. His screen identifies the plant as wild sweet potato leaves and stems. He realizes that means there is a massive sweet potato buried directly beneath the dirt. He swings his hoe to dig it up, but the moment the metal hits the root, a sudden burst of intense heat erupts from the ground. Lion tumbles back, and his screen reveals he just unlocked a roasted sweet potato because the fire spirit's blessing literally cooked the crop inside the dirt. He is left staring at his lunch in absolute dumbfounded silence, and his system interface is telling him he just unlocked the ultimate outdoor cooking shortcut. The blessing of the fire spirit literally turns his master-grade hoe into a portable microwave. He does not hesitate. He takes a massive bite. It is hot enough to melt his taste buds, but he is completely sold. He is doing the classic hot potato shuffle in his mouth, looking like an absolute child. He describes the taste as a perfect deep sweetness, as if he is washing it down with a glass of cold milk. He is officially having a main character moment over a roasted sweet potato in the middle of a dark forest. As he sits there celebrating, a wild, incredibly round bird flutters down from the canopy. It is a small, chubby white bird, and it is staring at him with pure, unblinking curiosity. Lion tosses a tiny piece of the sweet potato onto the dirt. The bird pecks at it, and its eyes literally turn into giant sparkling hearts. It is completely hooked. Lion smiles, feeding his new round companion and remembering a pet he used to have back when this world was just a game. But the lunch break is over. Now that his sugar levels are up, it is time to start the actual grind. He stands up, getting ready to harvest the high-grade herbs he needs for the 3-star potion. Meanwhile, back at the Asteri mansion, the peaceful afternoon is interrupted by sheer panic. John, Lion's personal valet, is leaning against a tree looking like a man who has not slept in 3 days. He is muttering to himself, wondering what on earth his master is doing at the smithy for so long. He looks up and sees Sylvia desperately explaining that the servants are spreading rumors that Lion is terminal. And then, right on cue, our guy strolls out of the bushes, waving happily with a giant bag of weeds and a fat bird sitting on his shoulder. John runs over, screaming in absolute horror at the state of Lion's dirt-covered clothes. Lion just laughs it off, while Sylvia stares at him with a deeply analytical expression, wondering how he ended up like this. Even John is distracted by the round white bird, which is currently chirping happily on Lion's shoulder. Sylvia steps forward, her voice calm but carrying an intense weight. She tells him he can stop now. Lion, being completely dense, assumes she heard about the deal from Patrick. He sighs, complaining that his grandfather has absolutely no tact and must have ruined the surprise. Sylvia is completely bewildered, but Lion tells her to be patient because his 1-week deadline is not up yet. She looks at him, her eyes widening as she repeats his words. He actually gathered all the ingredients. Lion flashes a bright, reassuring grin, running off to his lab to finish the brew as quickly as possible. He waves goodbye to John, telling him to take a break and go about his day. John runs after him, screaming that at the very least he needs to put some medicine on his scraped face. Sylvia is left standing alone on the stone path, completely speechless. We dive into her internal thoughts. As an ancient witch, her body is naturally immune to almost all human medicine and standard potions. She remembers watching Lion grow up, the most sickly, fragile child in the entire Asteri family, constantly coughing up blood. Seeing him work himself to the bone, digging in the mud just to make a medicine for her, gives her a tiny, ridiculous sliver of hope. She looks down at the path, wondering if a fragile boy like him can really perform a miracle. She watches him run off with his cute bird, a soft, incredibly rare warmth returning to her cold eyes. A few days later, we are back in Patrick's grand office. Patrick sits at his desk, noticing the dramatic change in Sylvia's expression as she holds a small bottle of medicine. She admits that the heavy, centuries-old haze clouding her mind and emotions has completely vanished. She looks at Patrick, accusing him of secretly helping the boy brew something of this legendary caliber. Patrick immediately denies it, pointing to the mountain of paperwork on his desk from preparing for Lion's cancelled coming-of-age ceremony. Sylvia's face goes pale. If the boy brewed a potion this powerful entirely on his own, they have a massive problem. She looks down at the glass bottle. This is not just a high-grade medicine. This is a true hero's potion. Patrick looks incredibly solemn. Traditionally, a hero is a tragic being, created by the world as a tool to destroy monsters, forced to fight endless bloody battles while their individual lives are filled with absolute despair and emptiness. And the moment peace returns to the world, they vanish without a single trace. Patrick tightly clasps his hands, his voice dropping to a low, painful whisper. He knows the truth. Their comrades and descendants searched for decades, but no one could find even a whisper of where the hero went. He looks out the window, imagining Lion's bright, cheerful smile. Patrick's eyes are filled with pure, grandfatherly determination. He already lost his closest comrade on the battlefield. He refuses to lose his grandson to the same tragic fate. Sylvia looks at him, a soft, knowing smile appearing on her face. She tells him that in that case, they need to hide their little puppy from the world and announces she will be retiring. Patrick slams his hands on the desk, outraged that she is giving up her own freedom just to protect Lion. He reminds her that she hated being bound to this family and that he wanted to find the contract to set her free. But Sylvia just gives him a cool, elegant look, repeating her favorite line about worrying about a witch. She steps back, her feet dissolving into swirling pools of dark shadow magic. She recites the ancient contract by heart. She cannot leave the Asteri territory, but she can live as a human within its borders. She begins to transform, her posture shifting, her long silver hair darkening. The elderly head maid completely disappears, replaced by a stunningly beautiful young woman with very long, silky black hair. She looks back at him with piercing crimson eyes, declaring she will gladly protect their puppy from the shadows. Meanwhile, in another lavishly decorated wing of the Asteri mansion, the calm evening is interrupted by a very quiet, highly suspicious voice. We see a young blonde boy sitting in a high-backed chair, his fingers folded as he learns that a new exclusive maid has just been hired for his talentless older brother. Inside the luxurious study, the rumors about the sudden staff changes are already causing waves. This is Lixil Asteri, the second son of the household, and he is currently looking incredibly stressed. He is a certified world-class prodigy, the youngest fourth circle mage in history, heavily resembling Patrick in both raw talent and appearance. He holds a swirling orb of high-level magic, his gaze cold and calculating. To a logical, highly analytical mind like his, the sudden retirement of the family's chief attendant was already highly suspicious. He looks down at a document on his desk. Sylvia retiring over a single potion made zero sense, but hiring a brand new, completely unknown maid the exact same day is actively setting off alarm bells. He flashes back to last night, remembering the conversation he had in this very room. Sylvia had paid him a visit, looking remarkably bright, to deliver her final greetings before departing. She had placed her hand over her heart, claiming Lion's potion had been of immense help to her. Lixil had clenched his fist, finding it completely impossible to believe his supposedly talentless brother could brew something that powerful. Sylvia had simply smiled, suggesting that if he doubted her words, he should go pay his older brother a visit, reminding him that he used to follow Lion around when they were kids. She had given him a soft, mysterious look, telling him that if he was curious, it would not hurt to follow the eldest young master around for a little bit. Back in the present, Lixil is staring at the report, realizing he could not stop her because she looked far too relieved. He stands up, dramatically flinging his dark cloak over his shoulders. He decides he has to see the truth for himself, heading toward the Mimir forest where Lion was last spotted. The scene shifts to the dark, incredibly gloomy Mimir forest at night. Lixil is struggling through the thick undergrowth, complaining that there is not even a proper path. He is panting, wondering what on earth his fragile brother could possibly find appealing about a creepy place like this. Suddenly, a loud thwack sound echoes through the dark trees. Lixil freezes, carefully parting the bushes to see what is happening ahead. He peeks through the foliage and spots a dark silhouette crouching on the forest floor. It is Lion, and he is currently holding a glowing, beautifully roasted sweet potato, getting ready to take a massive bite. Lion opens his mouth wide, completely unaware that he is being watched. Lixil panics, thinking his sickly brother is about to eat a dirty, poisonous rock, and fires a blast of magic from his wand. A beam of brilliant blue energy splits the air, hitting the sweet potato directly out of Lion's hand. The potato is completely pulverized, and both brothers stand there in a dead silent, incredibly awkward pose. Lion falls to his knees, literally crying tears of absolute despair over his crushed sweet potato. He turns around, completely furious, demanding to know who just ruined his dinner. Lixil steps out of the shadows, looking highly flustered, and Lion's jaw drops. Lion asks what his prodigy younger brother is doing out here in the middle of nowhere. He crosses his arms, his face twisting into a look of pure comedic dread as he wonders if this is some kind of dramatic rivalry check. Lixil coughs, trying to sound dignified as he lectures his brother about the unhygienic dangers of eating dirt-covered objects. Lion is completely speechless, trying to explain that sweet potatoes are literally supposed to have dirt on them because they grow underground. Lixil's face goes completely blank. He has literally never heard of a sweet potato in his entire noble life. Lion looks at him like he is an alien, telling him he is seriously missing out on the best things in life. Before Lixil can argue, Lion tells him to sit down on a log while he goes to dig up some more. As Lion walks away, he looks back over his shoulder with a bright, scheming grin. He asks if Lixil can use his high-level fire magic to make a small campfire for them. Lixil reluctantly nods, admitting that much is easy. Lixil sits on the log, staring into the flickering flames of the campfire he just built. Lion returns, carrying a massive armful of fresh sweet potatoes, and without a single care in the world, he dumps them all directly into the burning hot coals. Lixil panics, thinking they will just burn to ash, but Lion reassures him the thick skin cooks the inside perfectly. They sit in silence, the quiet crackle of the fire filling the dark forest. Lixil looks down, his expression heavy with the quiet exhaustion of a child forced to carry the weight of an entire family's expectations. Lion looks at him, his purple eyes soft as he prepares to drop some genuine, older brotherly wisdom. He tells him that sometimes doing something completely different is the only way to clear your head. He explains that running forward is great, but taking a break is just as important, and Lixil quietly absorbs the words. Lion pokes the fire, declaring the potatoes are finally ready to eat. Lixil carefully picks up a hot potato, peels back the charred skin, and takes a bite. His eyes literally widen in pure, unadulterated joy as the sweet flavor hits him. Lion smiles, proudly explaining that this is the legendary roasted banana sweet potato. And we get a classic, sarcastic narrator transition about how chilly nights in the forest make you crave warm comfort food. A beautiful, highly nostalgic graphic of winter street food stands pops up, complete with fish-shaped pastries. Back in reality, Lixil is absolutely housing the sweet potatoes, packing them away like a black hole. Lion watches him, smiling warmly as he reflects on how growing teenagers always have massive appetites. Lixil suddenly stops, looking down at his lap. He realizes he has literally eaten a massive mountain of sweet potatoes, and his face goes completely red. Lion just laughs, telling him to eat as much as he wants, thanking him for working so hard for the family in his place. Lixil looks up, deeply moved, as Lion explains that while being sick is rough, it is also incredibly hard on the people watching over them. Lion looks at him with a gentle, sincere smile, telling him he does not consider his own weak body a burden. He reassures Lixil that he has never once blamed him for carrying the family's expectations. Lixil blushes, quietly admitting that he was actually a little jealous of Lion because his older brother has things he does not. Lion bursts into a bright laugh, putting his hands up to reassure him. He steps forward, telling Lixil that he is still just a kid. He explains that at his age, he is fully allowed to be a little selfish sometimes. Lion sits down next to him, gently patting his shoulder and telling him he has done a truly great job. Lixil looks away, a soft, genuine smile finally appearing on his face as he feels the warm weight of his brother's hand. The camera pans up to the beautiful full moon shining over the forest, the younger brother silently realizing Sylvia's words were entirely true. Our guy is back in his luxury bedroom, kicking back on his massive bed, and his system screen is displaying a very beautiful balance of 71,500 shillings. He is completely satisfied with himself, casually yawning and thinking his grandfather just got dumped by Sylvia. He stretches his arms, celebrating that his standing with his little brother Lixil is at an all-time high, when a polite, incredibly soft knock at his door interrupts his peaceful daydream. He tells them to come in, and the door slowly swings open. A stunning young maid with long black hair and striking red eyes steps into the room, introducing herself as Elvia. Lion feels an immediate, deeply suspicious wave of discomfort, but his dense brain immediately rationalizes it away. He assumes she is just a relative of Sylvia's who was hired to fill the vacancy, welcoming her to the staff. He smiles warmly, looking incredibly relaxed as he thanks her for her previous advice. Elvia looks at him, her crimson eyes completely blank as she tries to process his words. She politely admits she has absolutely no idea what he is talking about, but Lion just waves his hand, telling her not to worry. He grabs his leather bag, telling her they can continue this conversation later because he has already scheduled a full day out with his younger brother. We cut to the bustling sunlit streets of the local town. Lixil is walking slightly ahead of Lion, his face twisted into a look of deep analytical concern. His inner monologue is currently running a full-blown math equation on his brother's physical state. He calculates that Lion has collapsed or fainted over 900,000 times during their daily mountain walks, and concludes that his brother's terminal mana shock is about to make him miss the upcoming coming-of-age ceremony entirely. Since the Asteri mages have a terrible relationship with the local holy order, Lixil has designed a massive, top-secret volunteer mission to a temple orphanage just to get a secret consultation with a priest. Lion asks where they are going, and Lixil explains they need to buy some high-end disguises so they are not recognized as wealthy nobles. Lion immediately suggests finding a standard clothing store, but Lixil firmly declines. He looks back with a knowing grin, telling him they are heading to a highly exclusive magic item shop. The bell on the shop door rings as they step inside the dimly lit store. Lion looks around the empty shelves, completely amazed that a hidden place like this existed right inside their territory. Lixil reassures him that only a select few people frequent this establishment, so there should not be any illegal contraband. But he adds a very suspicious "probably" that instantly sends a sweat drop down Lion's face. Lion scans the display cases, his system eyes cataloging weird items like ear-shaped earrings and a triple-writing fountain pen. Lixil clears his throat, acting like an experienced scholar who discovered this place during his academy days. The shopkeeper, a jolly bald man with a giant mustache, welcomes them with wide-open arms. He proudly boasts that his store has absolutely everything in stock, except for a miracle potion that grows hair on a bald head. Lixil cuts through the small talk, stating they are strictly looking for high-quality disguise tools. The shopkeeper guides them to a massive glass display case in the back of the room. Lion System UI flags a bunch of joke-tier items like a skinny bracelet that causes massive midnight munchies as a side effect. The merchant pulls a rope, revealing a highly secure shelf of premium, highly effective transformation artifacts. He showcases a beautiful golden brooch called the Perfect Child, which completely alters the user's hair and eye color for 10 hours. They make the purchase, and the little brass bell rings as they step back out onto the street. Lixil asks how he liked the shop, and Lion admits it was an incredibly interesting experience. He reaches into his paper bag, noticing the merchant threw in a few extra items because they spent a small fortune. He pulls out a heavy, dark, rectangular case, his eyes widening as his system scans the item. It is an artisan's repair set, a highly valuable tool that can restore any physical object below master grade. Lion realizes this is way too valuable to be a simple freebie, but since he does not need it, he happily hands it over to Lixil. Lixil looks deeply touched by the gesture, guiding Lion into a quiet, empty alleyway to use the brook. A beautiful glowing blue magical aura erupts around them as the transformation activates. In a flash of light, both brothers are fully disguised, their bright blonde hair shifting to a soft commoner brown. Lixil smiles, thoroughly pleased that they can now walk around the territory without attracting any unwanted attention. They walk down a dirt path, and Lion asks why they are at a local mill instead of the temple. Lixil explains that high-quality flour is a primary donation item, so he stopped by to check on their order first. He casually mentions that this mill also bakes fresh bread, which is highly popular with the local townspeople. But Lixil's inner monologue reveals his true, highly tactical goal. The mill owner, Nicholas, is a deeply devout believer who coordinates major donations and has a massive network within the Holy Order. By building a solid relationship with him, Lixil can easily secure an invite to meet a high priest. Nicholas welcomes them warmly, praising the incredible quality of the wheat they ordered for the charity. He looks at the massive sacks, curious as to why two wealthy young masters need so much flour. Lixil explains they are donating it to help the less fortunate, asking if Nicholas has any good recommendations. Nicholas rubs his chin, and Lixil is internally begging him to suggest the temple orphanage. Right on cue, Nicholas suggests donating directly to the orphanage under the temple's jurisdiction, and Lixil is celebrating his tactical victory. Nicholas's expression turns slightly anxious, admitting that the orphanage's funding has taken a massive hit recently. Because magic families dominate the territory, the temple receives very little local support. Lixil looks at him, deeply moved by the heavy reality of the situation, planning how to help them. But Lion suddenly steps forward, tapping his chin as a brilliant idea strikes him. He looks at Nicholas and asks if they can use the mill's facilities to bake fresh, hot bread for the children right now. Lion enthusiastically explains that donating raw flour is great, but the orphanage might not have the extra ingredients or time to bake it. Nicholas's face completely lights up, proudly boasting that his shop makes the absolute best bread in the entire territory. Lixil is standing behind his brother, a look of profound realization washing over his face. He is deeply ashamed of his own selfishness, realizing he was so focused on his secret medical mission that he completely missed the actual needs of the children. He looks at Lion, his eyes filled with pure younger brotherly admiration. Lion punches the air in excitement, ready to start the baking grind. They walk into the warm, spacious kitchen of the mill. Lion scans the counters, his system UI highlighting bags of whole wheat flour and premium olive oil. He is thoroughly pleased to see a 2-star rating on the olive oil, which guarantees incredible flavor. Nicholas stands in the center of the kitchen, explaining they will be making a simple, classic wheat bread that kids absolutely love. He rolls up his sleeves, preparing to demonstrate the entire process. He pours the milk, mixes the yeast, and kneads the dough with master-level precision, explaining every single step. He finishes the loaf, placing it on the wooden table. Lixil looks at the dough, thinking this is laughably simple compared to the complex equations of high-level magic. He finishes his loaf in record time, turning around to see how his older brother is doing. Lion is standing by his counter, his hands raised dramatically in the air like a mad scientist channeling cosmic energy. Nicholas puts the first batch of dough into the roaring stone oven. They wait a few minutes, the delicious scent of baking bread filling the entire room. Nicholas pulls the first tray out, and both he and Lixil stare down in complete, deadpan silence. Lixil's dough has turned into a completely burnt, solid black charcoal rock, and Nicholas tries to comfort him. He tells him it is a classic beginner mistake from putting in too much dough, and turns to check on Lion's batch. He pulls the oven door open, and a literal blinding flash of golden light erupts from the stone oven. A beautifully baked, perfectly golden loaf of Asteri made whole wheat bread appears on his system screen. The system pops up, informing Lion that his cooking proficiency has officially increased to apprentice level 2. Nicholas is looking at him like he just witnessed water turning into wine, demanding to know his secret technique. Lion just laughs, rubbing the back of his head and claiming he did not do anything special. He explains he just wanted the children to have the prettiest, most delicious bread possible, so he made a few simple cuts on top before baking. Nicholas's eyes are filled with pure emotional respect, realizing these young mages are pouring their entire hearts into this charity. He suddenly grabs his coat, asking them to watch the ovens for a brief moment because there is somewhere he absolutely must go. Lion tells him it is perfectly fine, and Nicholas bolts out the door. He runs down the dirt road as fast as his legs can carry him. Lion wonders if they put too much of a burden on him, but Lixil tells him they should just keep baking. Lixil pulls his gloves back on, his face filled with determination to not fall behind his brother. They work in perfect, silent harmony, placing row after row of dough onto the trays. The system keeps ticking up, showing their progress toward the aspiring baker achievement. Lion smiles, carrying another tray of flawless, golden loaves out of the oven. Suddenly, the front door swings open, and Nicholas calls out to them. But he is not alone. An enormous crowd of local townspeople is standing right behind him, carrying bags and boxes. A kind noblewoman explains that Nicholas told the entire town about their beautiful hearts, and they all came to help. Mudu's wife, Leah, steps forward, explaining that her husband was too busy at the forge, so she came in his place. Lion put his finger to his lips, silently telling her to keep his secret identity safe from his brother. The townspeople immediately get to work, unloading heavy crates of fresh supplies. They stack bottles of milk, fresh cheese, and sacks of vegetables on the grass. And a hyper-muscular townswoman literally hurls a mountain of heavy potato sacks onto the pile. A single loose potato rolls gently onto the dirt. The other villagers are staring at her massive forearms in absolute awe, whispering that she used to wrestle wild bears. Lixil stands by his brother, completely speechless at the massive mountain of donated goods they managed to collect. He looks at the cheering townspeople, his heart filled with a mixture of awe and profound shame at his own initial motives. He watches Lion's bright, laughing face, silently promising to protect his brother's kind soul. He knows Lion is destined for incredible greatness, and he is proud to stand by his side. A few hours later, they arrive at the beautiful stone building of the temple orphanage. The head director stands on the steps, her hands clasped in deep gratitude as she thanks the two young masters for their incredible grace. A group of cute, curious orphans peek out from behind the door, sniffing the delicious scent of fresh bread. They cheer, running out to look at the massive crates of beautiful clothes and food. The director asks if they would mind handing out the bread to the children themselves, and Lixil happily agrees. Lion kneels down, handing a warm golden loaf to a smiling little girl. As he smiles, his eyes suddenly freeze. He spots a quiet, dark-haired boy standing alone in the shadows of the courtyard trees, watching them with intense, unblinking eyes. The moment their eyes meet, the boy turns around and bolts into the forest. Lion walks over to the director, asking who that antisocial child was. She sighs, apologizing for his behavior, and explains his name is Peter. She asks Lion not to pay him any mind, but as the boy disappears into the distance, Lion's eyes narrow, sensing a massive plot hook. The direct donation event is wrapping up, and the courtyard is finally clearing out. Our guy Lion is still holding a basket, scanning the area because he noticed one specific seat is empty. Peter is still curled up under the tree, actively practicing his antisocial protocol. The director explains that Peter has a habit of rejecting everything. The kid is so guarded that his adoption fell through 3 times, and now he is basically running a solo hunger strike against the entire world. Lion takes one look at him and feels that classic main character urge to intervene. He can see the kid is severely malnourished. He is way too skinny for his age, looking like a light breeze could knock him over. So, Lion strolls over with his best customer service voice, trying to sound as unthreatening as possible. Peter flinches the second he hears a human voice approaching. Lion sits right down in the grass next to him, breaking all noble etiquette rules because he is wearing a disguise anyway. He presents the last remaining loaf of freshly baked wheat bread like a rare item drop. Peter does not even look at him. He is giving him the absolute coldest shoulder a 9-year-old can physically muster. But our guy does not back down. He starts describing the bread like a food blogger, talking about how warm, chewy, and savory it is. He is laying the sensory bait on thick. And the universe immediately punishes Peter's pride. His stomach lets out a rumbling noise so loud it practically echoes across the courtyard. Lion calls him out on it instantly. Peter immediately rolls over, hiding his face in pure embarrassment. Lion realizes this isn't a normal temper tantrum. If the kid is starving but still refusing food, he has deep trust issues. He needs space, not a lecture. So instead of pushing, Lion just sits there. He does not talk. He does not leave. He just keeps him company in the quiet shade. The sun starts setting, and the other volunteers are waving goodbye as they wrap up their shift. Peter actually ended up falling asleep right there in the grass. He slowly blinks his eyes open as the evening breeze starts rustling the trees. He starts mumbling to himself about how all these volunteers are just hypocrites who do charity to feel good about themselves before leaving forever. Then a voice right next to him asks if he is awake. Peter jumps like he just stepped on a physical landmine. He cannot believe this weird commoner guy is still sitting there. Lion is completely unfazed. He holds up the bread again, asking if he wants a bite because he is absolutely starving after sitting there for hours. Peter gives him a sharp scoff and turns his head away. Lion looks at him, asking if he is genuinely going to reject it. Lion sighs, saying that if that is how it is going to be, he has only one choice. He grabs the massive loaf and tears it right down the middle, and then he just shoves a giant piece into his own mouth. Peter is absolutely stunned. He did not expect the charity worker to eat the charity. Lion casually tells him that throwing away perfectly good bread is a sin, so he is just going to finish the whole thing himself. Peter realizes his dinner is actively disappearing. The kid's survival instincts finally override his defensive protocol. He lunges forward, yelling that he is going to eat it, snatching the other half right out of Lion's hand. He takes a massive, aggressive bite just to prove a point, and his entire system immediately crashes. The culinary flashbang of a level 2 cooking skill hits his brain like a truck. He starts devouring the bread like a feral animal, completely forgetting his whole angry orphan persona. Lion watches him with a satisfied smile, then gently reaches into his basket and pulls out another piece. He tells Peter that this was supposed to be his own dinner portion, but the kid can have it. He is delivering peak older brother energy right now. Peter looks up, his golden eyes wide, reflecting the warm, genuine smile of the guy standing in front of him. The kid is thoroughly confused. He knows this is just regular, everyday bread with no expensive ingredients or magic attributes, so his brain cannot compute why it tastes like the best thing he has ever consumed in his entire life. He starts getting suspicious again. In his experience, adults only act this nice when they are trying to put on a show for others. We see his memory of his previous foster parents. They acted incredibly sweet in public, but the second he did not instantly view them as his real parents, they threw him right back to the orphanage like unwanted luggage. The painful memory starts bringing tears to his eyes. He is holding the bread tightly, feeling that familiar sting of betrayal. He tells himself that all adults are liars. He is chewing through his tears, trying to steel his heart against the kindness. Then Lion breaks the silence, asking if Peter knows a universal truth about life. Lion explains that when adults get genuinely upset, the very first dumb thing they do is skip their meals, completely ignoring the fact that they will just feel physically worse later. But Peter, despite being clearly upset, is eating perfectly fine. Lion smiles warmly, telling him that when he was baking this bread today, he spent the whole time hoping someone would truly enjoy it. So seeing Peter eat it like this makes him genuinely happy. Lion points out that he is crying, and Peter immediately starts bawling, using the classic excuse that the bread is just so good it is forcing the tears out of his eyes. Lion just goes along with the cover story, asking if that is really the case, and Peter nods through his tears. Under the beautiful, warm sunset glow, Peter whispers a quiet thank you. The absolute defense wall around his heart has officially crumbled. Lion pats his shoulder and promises to bake an even bigger batch next time, extending his pinky finger for a formal agreement. Peter stares at the extended finger like he has never seen a pinky swear in his life. He asks if he is seriously making a promise. Lion replies that, for the record, he has never once broken a promise in his entire life, which is technically true if you do not count his corporate promises in his past life. He looks at the kid with absolute sincerity, telling him to lock that fact in his memory. Peter slowly wraps his tiny pinky around Lion's, agreeing that if he returns, he will eat 2 entire loaves next time. Lion laughs, asking why he is limiting himself to 2 when he could easily manage 3. He starts patting the kid's head, completely winning him over. In the background, the orphanage director is watching the entire scene play out. She is holding her hand over her heart, looking like she is about to join Peter in the crying department. She cannot remember the last time she saw Peter show a genuine, happy smile. The kid has been a locked fortress for years, and this random commoner boy cracked the code in a single afternoon. She realizes that if the orphanage staff had been this patient and genuine instead of just treating the kids like a checklist of chores, they might have opened up much sooner. Lion walks back, hand in hand with a much calmer Peter. The director feels a deep wave of shame for always using her busy schedule as an excuse to neglect the kids' emotional needs. She looks at Lion, thinking that someone this pure and sincere must carry the genuine blessing of the gods. Night finally falls over the orphanage, and the kids are waving goodbye from the doors, shouting for them to return soon. Lion waves back, promising to see them later, but as they turn to leave, the director runs up to them, asking if they could possibly stay at the orphanage just a little bit longer. She explains that she made a quick magic call to the main branch, and a highly prestigious priest from the temple is arriving very soon. She wants them to stay and receive a high-level divine blessing as a reward for their charity. Behind his disguise, Lixel's eyes light up. His secret medical evaluation plan worked perfectly. He steps forward, playing the polite noble role, saying it would be rude to refuse such immense kindness. The director gratefully leads them back inside the main parlor. Outside, the sound of heavy hooves begins to echo as a high-class carriage speeds down the road toward the orphanage. Inside the carriage, a man with sharp glasses and intensely focused eyes peeks through the curtain. The priest has officially arrived, and he looks like he is about to audit someone's taxes. We open inside the parlor, where the atmosphere has suddenly become incredibly quiet. Lixel leans over to Lion, whispering that they should probably dodge this meeting and head home. Since the priest is from the Holy Temple, he is worried the guy might detect their magic and cause political trouble for House Asteri. Lion does not hesitate for a single second. He leaps out of his seat, saying he just remembered he left his oven running back at the mansion. Lixel is completely flabbergasted by how fast his brother folded. Lion waves his hands dramatically, claiming his baking class is about to start, and dashes out of the room like a salaryman escaping Friday overtime. Lixel sighs as the door slams. But then, he locks in. He realizes this actually works out. If the priest holds any hidden hostility toward the magic nobility, it is much safer for Lixel to screen him first before letting him anywhere near Lion's fragile body. He hears the door handle turn. The door slowly creaks open, and a deep, calm voice greets him. A brilliant light floods the room as High Priest Licht steps inside, his hands folded in prayer. He looks incredibly majestic, but those glowing gold eyes behind his glasses suggest he is not someone you can easily fool. Licht sits down across from Lixel, mentioning that the director informed him about an anonymous benefactor who donated a massive supply of high-grade food. Lixel, still disguised, calmly confirms the story. Lixel observes him closely, noting that Licht is remarkably young to be a high priest. Typically, priests of his caliber stay locked inside the Grand Temple, so the fact that he is traveling to a remote orphanage means he is a certified elite. Licht gracefully accepts a cup of tea, thanking Lixel on behalf of the entire temple. Lixel plays it cool, saying he only did what anyone else would do. But then Lixil shifts the conversation, stating that the real mastermind behind the entire charity event was his older brother, who even came up with the custom bread recipe. Licht takes a sip of tea, his eyes narrowing slightly. Licht asks if he is referring to the older brother who supposedly had to leave early because he felt unwell. Lixil looks down, putting on his best tragic face. Lixil clenches his hands, explaining that his older brother has been incredibly frail since childhood, suffering from a mysterious, incurable illness that leaves him constantly exhausted. He confesses that he did not come to the orphanage purely out of goodwill. He intentionally organized the donation to draw out a high-level priest who could perform a diagnostic check on his brother. Licht smiles gently, telling the young benefactor to calm his heart. But then the room goes dead silent as Licht leans forward, his glasses reflecting the dim light. He reveals that he also came here in absolute secret, actively bypassing the temple's official surveillance. Lixil panics internally, wondering if the priest is rejecting his request. Licht's expression is completely unreadable. Then, Licht tells him to return in exactly 3 days. Licht requests that they meet at this exact same hour, but Lixil must bring his older brother along. The appointment is set. We cut to 3 days later. The sky is bright, and Lixil bursts into Lion's workshop at the mansion, looking like he just ran a marathon. Lion is currently lounging in his chair, playing with magic potions at midnight. Lixil immediately starts lecturing him about his terrible sleep schedule, asking how he expects to recover his health if he keeps pulling all-nighters. Lion gives him a lazy smile, asking why he is so energized. Lixil proudly announces that the high priest has officially agreed to examine his body. Lion is surprised. Lixil explains that the priest was so moved by their anonymous charity work that he offered to use his high-grade divine magic to cure whatever is holding Lion back. Lion has a massive sweat drop moment. He realizes he is not actually sick. Ever since he unlocked his mana circle, his body has been perfectly fine, and those old mana shocks are completely gone. He is basically in peak condition. He has actually built up some serious stamina from his daily routine of pulling weeds and hammering metal. But as he looks at his system prompt, he realizes a free checkup from a high priest is a rare opportunity. He decides to accept the offer. He tells Lixil he will go, and his younger brother immediately lights up with pure, wholesome joy. But then Lixil mentions one weird detail. The priest specifically requested to meet at dawn, which is a highly unusual time for a medical appointment. Lion asks when exactly this meeting is supposed to happen. Dawn, 3 days later. They arrive back at the orphanage parlor. Lion's system immediately triggers a blue holographic item description over a bottle on the table. It is a premium item that usually requires unlocking hidden conditions. Lion is thoroughly impressed by the priest's inventory. Lixil whispers to Lion to stay alert as Licht walks into the room. Lion bows politely, greeting the priest. Licht welcomes them with a gentle smile, suggesting they sit down for a quick chat before beginning the process. As they sit around the table, Lion decides to address the elephant in the room. He asks why Licht specifically requested a dawn meeting. Licht takes a moment, his expression turning solemn. He reveals that he recently had a highly vivid dream about the two brothers. He explains that high-ranking priests sometimes receive prophetic revelations from the gods while they sleep. He describes the dream. He saw a group of children sleeping peacefully in a golden field, and the two brothers were standing beside them like guardians. Even though their physical appearance in the dream was slightly different, he knew instantly it was them. Licht explains that the dream left him with such a profound, warm feeling that he felt a divine obligation to meet them in person and confirm their true nature. But behind that warm explanation, Licht's sharp analytical mind is running at 100 miles an hour. He is closely observing their reactions. He deduces that the younger brother is clearly a highly trained mage based on his elegant posture and speech patterns. He realizes that for mages of their caliber to wear high-grade disguise brooches, they must belong to a prominent noble house, most likely the infamous Asteri family. He wonders if their true goal is to steal temple secrets under the guise of seeking medical help. Licht decides he will find the truth once he examines the older brother's mana flow. He asks if he may proceed with the treatment, and Lixil politely steps out of the room to give them space. Licht tells Lion to relax as he prepares his divine magic. Lion thanks him, sitting back in the chair. Licht places his hand over Lion's chest. A massive torrent of bright green divine magic floods the room, wrapping around Lion's body like a vortex. But the second the magic connects, Licht's face freezes in complete shock. He cannot believe what his mana sensors are telling him. The diagnostic spell was cast perfectly, but there is absolutely zero reaction from Lion's body. The divine magic is not registering any blockages, illnesses, or anomalies. Licht assumes he made a calculation error. He grits his teeth and channels an even larger wave of green divine energy, pushing his high priest limits to force a diagnostic reading. But the moment the massive waves of holy magic touch Lion's skin, they literally disintegrate into harmless green dust. Licht gasped, stepping back in absolute horror. He has never seen a human body reject divine blessing like this. Lion just blinks, smiling casually, saying he feels completely refreshed. Our guy stretches his arms, looking like he just finished a high-end spa session. He is shining with peak physical vitality. He gently rubs his shoulder, thoroughly enjoying the sudden relief of his muscle tension. Lion tells the priest that the blessing was incredibly effective and that he can stop now, but Licht is standing there sweating, completely lost in his own thoughts. Licht's brain has officially entered error mode. He knows there are only 3 possible reasons why a body would show zero response to a high-tier blessing. First, a Grandmaster Mage of higher standing is actively blocking the divine connection. Second, the target is already in absolute flawless physical health, meaning the magic has nothing to heal. And third, the individual was born with a severely limited lifespan, meaning their vessel is physically incapable of holding divine grace because their soul is already slipping away. Since Lion is supposed to be the weak, magicless, terminally ill heir of the Asteri family, Licht immediately discards the first 2 options. He looks at Lion's beautiful, peaceful smile and concludes that this poor, noble soul is literally on his deathbed. Before Lion can even react, Licht lunges forward and grabs his hands with a grip of absolute desperation. Licht begs him to visit the temple the very second he feels any pain. Lion is completely bewildered by this sudden, intense physical contact. Licht is practically burning with tragic determination. He tells Lion that when the physical agony becomes too much to bear and he cannot sleep, he must come to the temple, and Licht will personally use all his power to ease his suffering. Lion just nods slowly, completely weirded out by the massive misunderstanding. Licht slowly walks out of the parlor, his shoulders heavy with the tragic weight of knowing this young benefactor is doomed. Lion politely thanks him for his service as the door closes. Licht gives one final, sorrowful look before walking down the hallway. Lion stands there, scratching his head in pure confusion. He wonders why the priest looked like he was attending a funeral, feeling a sudden, deep sense of unease about whatever rumor is about to spread next. We cut to a beautiful clear sky over the grand estate. The title card reads, Asteri Castle. The massive, intimidating spires of the Asteri mansion loom over the territory. Outside the courtyard, a carriage pulls up. Lixel walks alongside Lion, expressing how incredibly relieved he is that the dawn trip turned out to be such a success. Lion happily agrees. Since he was already in perfect shape, the divine healing did not do any actual medical work, but the pure mana circulation completely cured his stiff shoulders from his marathon baking session. He is feeling fantastic. But then, Lion notices Lixel's face. The kid has massive dark circles under his eyes, looking like he has not slept since the last chapter. Lion asks if he is doing okay, but Lixel just brushes it off with a tired smile. Lixel says he has to head straight to the training grounds because his morning mana circle practice is about to begin. Lion is stunned by his relentless work ethic. Lion sighs as his younger brother walks away, mumbling about how pushing himself this hard is eventually going to ruin his physical constitution. Suddenly, Elvia manifests from the shadows behind him. She notes that the family heir's schedule is always incredibly demanding, but Lixel has been pushing himself even harder than usual lately. Lion agrees, expressing his deep concern. Elvia suggests that since Lion is scheduled to meet the family patriarch soon to discuss his coming-of-age ceremony, that would be the perfect opportunity to bring up Lixel's exhaustion with Patrick. She adds that their grandfather has also been dealing with a massive amount of political stress lately. A light bulb suddenly goes off inside Lion's brain. He smiles, realizing he needs to prepare a high-grade sweet treat to bribe his grandfather and secure his position. We see a preview of a mysterious potion bottle, signaling that our guy is about to return to the alchemy laboratory to cook up some absolute madness. Back in the Imperial kitchen, the grind never stops. Our guy is currently putting his back into kneading a fresh batch of dough, getting his daily arm workout in. He turns to his Shadow Witch bodyguard and thanks her for the excellent idea of baking cookies for his grandfather. Elvia immediately corrects him, reminding him her name is Elvia now, while dryly pointing out that the patriarch will eat literally anything Lion makes. Lion laughs, but his modern customer service brain refuses to deliver mid-tier work. If he is going to bribe his grandfather, he wants the man to genuinely enjoy it. Suddenly, a wild plot hook appears in his mind. Elvia looks on with absolute suspicion as Lion's eyes light up with a manic crafting energy. He slams down a pile of roasted sweet potatoes directly onto the prep table. Elvia points out that mixing sweet potatoes into high-end noble cookies is a highly chaotic combination, but Lion is convinced this is the perfect entry point. He starts dicing the roasted sweet potato to use as a natural sweetener, completely bypassing normal white sugar to make the flavor profile light and digestible for an elderly grand mage. Now it is time for the aesthetic phase. He rolls out the dough and stamps them into cute animal shapes like ducks, cats, and bears, mentally taking note to commission custom cookie cutters later. He slides the entire tray into the luxury magic oven and lets the heat do the work. The oven door opens, and a literal culinary flashbang hits the screen. The system dings, revealing Lion Asteri's special banana sweet potato chip cookies, a one-star item that physically reduces fatigue on consumption. Lion is genuinely confused as to why his food is suddenly displaying actual potion-like healing statistics, while Elvia stands there completely mesmerized by his raw talent. She tells him that a true chef never serves a dish without testing the batch first. Lion takes a massive bite, and the crunch is so perfect it triggers a core memory of high-end snacks from his past life as a Korean salaryman. The system dings again, raising his cooking proficiency to apprentice level 3 and saving the recipe to his inventory database. He thanks Elvia for the recipe assistance, but she politely downplays her role like a dutiful shadow employee. Lion tells her to pack up and go get some sleep because he has a second phase to execute, leaving her thoroughly confused. He gives her a bright, reassuring smile. In reality, he just needed her to leave the room so he could open his holographic gaming inventory without her thinking he is casting forbidden dark magic. Now that his cooking level is up, he wants to craft a custom beverage to pair with the cookies to maximize their healing output. He browses his unlocked list and selects a classic alchemical formula, the training aid drink. He reviews the recipe description. It requires lesser health potions, aqua rosemary oil, tart fruit, and star anise root. The passive buff physically alleviates the muscle pain experienced during intense physical training. He looks at the ingredients list, thinking it looks suspiciously like a fantasy version of holiday mulled wine, but he decides not to question the author's logic. He grabs a bowl of fresh oranges and lemons, inspecting their quality with his passive appraisal skill. It is time to cook. He neatly slices the lemons and oranges on the cutting board, then dumps 5 standard low-grade healing potions into a pot to simmer over a gentle flame. He drops the sliced citrus and star anise root into the bubbling mixture, letting the tangy, bright fragrance completely fill the kitchen. Once the brew is thoroughly infused, he strains the steaming crimson liquid and finishes the process with a single drop of premium aqua rosemary oil. The system dings, creating the alchemist training aid drink. The description confirms it slightly increases the efficiency of subsequent mana and physical training, basically acting as a literal pre-workout supplement. He takes a quick sip to confirm the flavor is balanced, then prepares the presentation tray. The combination of the warm spiced drink and the sweet potato cookies merges into a custom 2-star special beverage set, granting massive fatigue recovery and body ache relief. The system rewards his plating efforts by unlocking the achievement "Food tastes better when it looks good," dropping a massive 3,000 shillings directly into his escape fund. He takes off his dirty apron, satisfied with his cooking grind. Armed with his high-tier culinary bribe, he heads straight to the patriarch's office. He walks down the grand corridor of the mansion. He gives the heavy wooden doors a polite knock, calling out to his grandfather. Patrick looks up from his desk, his eyes immediately locking onto the tray. His immediate patriarch instinct is to assume the servants are slacking off by making his precious grandson carry his own food. Lion quickly laughs it off, explaining that he carried the tray himself because he wanted to deliver his new creations to his grandfather personally. He sets the tray down on the massive desk, explaining that the warm red drink is a custom brew paired with fresh cookies. Patrick stares at the beautifully arranged animal cookies like they are high-grade magical artifacts. Lion gives him a warm smile, saying he wanted to show off how much his crafting skills have progressed lately. Patrick slowly picks up a bear-shaped cookie, inspecting it with the gravity of a man preparing for a duel. He takes a bite, and the crisp crunch echoes in the quiet room. His eyes instantly widen in absolute, unadulterated shock. Patrick's internal monologue goes full food critic anime mode as he experiences the perfect, delicate sweetness of the banana sweet potato melting across his tongue. Meanwhile, Lion's visual interface goes wild with dings as his cooking proficiency hits apprentice level 4. Since bonus EXP is only awarded when someone genuinely enjoys his cooking, he realizes his grandfather is loving every single bite. Patrick quickly swallows and puts his stern, ruthless mask back on, telling Lion to spit out his true motive. Lion rubs the back of his neck, laughing that he can never hide anything from the family patriarch. He brings up the upcoming coming-of-age ceremony. He asks if Patrick could let Lixel ease up on his brutal training schedule until the ceremony is over. Lion explains that a coming-of-age ceremony is a major family milestone, and it is far too painful to watch his younger brother work himself to the bone. He requests that they ease up on the kid's training so the entire family can attend the celebration in good health and high spirits, and Patrick's internal tough guy facade completely disintegrates. He is internally crying tears of pure, unadulterated joy, wondering whose magical genes produced such a wholesome, self-sacrificing angel of a grandson. He spent decades worrying his grandsons would turn into power-hungry rivals fighting over the family inheritance, but instead, Lion is using his cooking skills to protect his brother's health. He clears his throat and grants the request, promising to let Lixel train independently at his own pace until the ceremony. Lion's face lights up with a bright thank you. But Patrick is not done. He looks at Lion and asks if there is absolutely nothing else he wants for his personal ceremony. Lion quickly waves his hands, saying he wants absolutely nothing else, and politely dismisses himself. Patrick watches him leave, deeply analytical. Patrick starts mentally reviewing the historical laws of the Empire. A coming-of-age ceremony in a high noble house is not just a party, it is a direct projection of family wealth. By ancient tradition, whatever the child desires must be obtained, even if it means securing a legendary, one-of-a-kind treasure from the other side of the continent. So when Lion says he wants absolutely nothing, Patrick's paranoid noble brain immediately translates that to, I expect you to read my mind and bring me the most mind-blowing, high-tier legendary gift in existence. Lion notices the terrifying vein-popping intensity on his grandfather's face and slowly backs out of the room before he gets caught in the blast zone. The heavy office doors close. Patrick sips his warm, spiced drink, his brow furrowed in deep, agonizing contemplation over what kind of legendary gift would satisfy his genius grandson. Meanwhile, our guy is walking down the corridor, completely oblivious to the golden tier misunderstanding he just manifested in his grandfather's head. Lion continues his stroll down the hall, feeling like a certified genius for securing Lixel's vacation time. We cut to Lixel's private study, where the young magic prodigy is currently drowning under a massive mountain of imperial paperwork. Suddenly, Lion kicks the door open with a loud sing-song shout, completely shattering the quiet atmosphere and startling his brother. Lion walks in, laughing at the sheer state of the room, teasing him about secretly living like a complete slob. Lixel blushes intensely, quickly gathering the stray documents while mumbling about how embarrassed he is that Lion had to see him in such an unrefined state. Lion sets down his custom snack tray, telling him he figured his hard-working younger brother could use a high-tier mana boost while grinding through his desk work. They sit down on the velvet sofa, and Lixel takes a bite of a bunny-shaped cookie. His eyes go wide as the sweet potato flavor hits his palate. He looks at Lion with absolute starry-eyed admiration, praising his brother's magical dexterity with baking dough. Lion leans back and tells him to put the paperwork down and take it easy until the coming-of-age ceremony, proudly announcing that he already secured the patriarch's permission to ease up on his schedule. He tells Lixel that he looked completely exhausted, so a vacation was mandatory. Lixel gives him a warm, emotional smile, deeply touched by how much his older brother is constantly watching over him. But then Lixel clears his throat and admits that the paperwork was not actually what was making him so tired. Lion's modern anime brain shipping instincts immediately kick in, assuming his teenage brother is secretly losing sleep over love letters. Lixel looks at him with pure, unadulterated disappointment, flatly denying the accusation. He explains that his true source of stress is the upcoming coming-of-age ceremony itself. Lion rests his chin on his hand, realizing it must have something to do with the ancient family ritual. Here is how the Asteri coming-of-age ritual actually works. It is set inside a unique, high-tier magical dimension known as the Library Labyrinth. It is a dynamic skill acquisition site that bends to the user's mental frequency. If you try to aggressively conquer it, it turns into an impenetrable, shifting maze. But if you accept its magical guidance, it is nothing more than a quiet library where the system drops the exact high-tier spellbook you need. Lion assumes Lixil is just worried because Lion supposedly lacks the active mana reserves to survive a magical maze, so he tells him the whole ritual is just a harmless noble formality anyway. Lixil facepalms, sighing that the magical labyrinth is not the problem at all. The real crisis is the close. Lion's face goes completely blank as he tries to process that sentence. Lixil stands up, pulls a rolled-up design sketch from his files, and slams it directly onto the table with the gravity of a general declaring war. He reveals the horrific truth. While Patrick Asteri is a legendary 8-circle Grand Mage, his aesthetic fashion sense is a literal crime against humanity. The sketch displays an atrocious, high-pointed neon blue outfit with blinding red capes, bright green pants, and literal red high heels. The brothers stare at the paper in absolute horrified silence, both agreeing that letting the most powerful mage in the Empire show up to a public ceremony looking like a discarded cartoon villain would permanently destroy the family's dignity. Lion screams, asking how the patriarch managed to dress normally until now. Lixil explains that the ancient shadow witch Sylvia was secretly gatekeeping his wardrobe and stopping his fashion crimes for the last 100 years. Lion has a moment of deep, profound respect for Sylvia's true power. Realizing they are currently defenseless, he clenches his fist and vows to find a professional designer to custom-make matching family outfits before his grandfather ruins their lives. We cut to the outskirts of the territory. Lion is wearing his hooded commoner cloak, arriving at the dwarf forge where Leah and the high-energy toddlers immediately run out to welcome him. He greets the kids with a warm smile, pulling out a bag of his custom fatigue relief cookies to share with them. The toddlers are completely overjoyed, devouring the cookies while Lion turns to Leah to address his true mission. Leah is surprised as Lion asks if she remembers the highly skilled master tailor who volunteered with them at the temple orphanage. Lion wants a direct introduction, but Leah's face immediately turns solemn and hesitant. Lion explains that during the orphanage donation, he watched the tailor effortlessly alter children's clothing on the spot and spin master-grade outfits from simple scraps of trash fabric. The man was a clear prodigy. Leah slowly agrees to arrange the meeting, but her expression remains deeply troubled. Lion asks if there is some hidden political reason why she is hesitating to connect them. Leah just sighs, telling him he will understand the situation the second he arrives at the shop. Our guy travels deep into the rundown slum district, standing in front of a ruined, creaking building with a broken, rotting wooden sign. He stares at the spelling error-ridden boutique sign, seriously questioning if his system's navigation coordinates just broke. He pushes the door open and walks down a long, dark, slightly creepy hallway lined with blank, naked mannequins, wondering why a master craftsman of this caliber is living in absolute squalor. He calls out into the darkness, and a pale, hollow-eyed man suddenly manifests behind him like a specter, whispering a raspy greeting. But the second the lights hit them, Andre explodes into a sparkling, highly dramatic fashion diva pose, grabbing Lion's hands and screaming in pure ecstasy at the sight of a real customer. Then Andre stops, squinting at Lion's face, realizing he looks exactly like the young noble volunteer from the orphanage despite the different hair color. Lion scratches his cheek, politely apologizing for using his perfect child disguise brooch during their charity work to avoid drawing the attention of the magic nobility. Andre immediately relaxes, smiling gracefully, saying it is completely natural for elite nobles to travel incognito. He asks what brings a member of the prestigious Asteri family all the way to his rundown boutique. Lion explains he is looking to commission a master-grade family outfit. Andre's face immediately turns pale with anxiety. He asks why someone from the Imperial Magic family would ever settle for a disgraced outcast like him, but he quickly catches himself, politely inviting Lion into his private showroom to sit down and discuss the project. As they walk inside, Lion's eyes lock onto a display shelf glittering with grand prize medals and imperial certificates. He realizes this guy literally won the most prestigious fashion competition in the Empire before getting cancelled. Andre looks down in shame, setting the table and offering to boil some tea. Lion sets down his basket, offering his custom sweet potato cookies to pair with the drink. Andre pours the tea into a slightly chipped cup, constantly apologizing for his poor circumstances. He looks at the bear-shaped cookies, surprised that a high noble young master baked them himself. He recalls how delicious the orphanage bread was, wondering what kind of flavor profile Lion managed to pack into a simple cookie. He politely thanks him and takes a bite. The crisp crunch echoes, and Andre's system is instantly hit by the culinary blast. His brain enters a full-blown food fantasy sequence. The crisp outer crunch instantly melts into a soft, velvety sweet potato texture on his tongue. At first, the flavor profile feels like a simple, refreshing country youth working under a bright autumn sun. But then, it suddenly shifts into a dramatic royal romance, like a crown prince getting his heart stolen at first sight by a beautiful maiden in a golden field. The sheer emotional contrast of the flavor profile is as bright and exhilarating as the thrill of a first love. Andre's face contorts into a masterpiece of dramatic intensity as he screams that this is no longer simple food, this is high art. Meanwhile, Lion is casually sipping his tea, completely used to his system food breaking people's brains. Andre looks at him, thinking that this disgraced noble cast-off is a walking mystery that no one in the Empire has even begun to comprehend. The plate is left with nothing but crumbs. Andre wipes his mouth, deeply moved by the experience. He tells Lion that the cookie has sent a massive surge of creative inspiration directly into his soul. He sits down, his expression turning solemn and honest. He tells Lion he will hold nothing back. He confirms that Lion wants to commission clothing for his family. He confidently states that his pattern drafting, fabric cutting, and embroidery skills are superior to anyone else in the capital. However, there is a massive catch. If the high nobility learns that Andre designed the outfits for the Asteri ceremony, it will spark an absolute political scandal, and Lion will face severe public ridicule. He clenches his fists, revealing the tragic truth: he is the illegitimate child of a noble house. Lion internally notes that classist noble privilege really does make people quick to trash someone's career. Andre explains that the high nobles view fashion as an exclusive luxury for pure bloodlines. When rumors spread about his illegitimate status, his noble sponsors instantly abandon him to protect their reputation. He suggests that if Lion decides to use his services, they must lie and claim the outfits were designed by a nameless commoner newcomer. Lion immediately raises his hand, cutting him off. Lion tells him to hold on, calmly asking to inspect his existing portfolio first, regardless of noble rumors. Andre hesitantly pulls back a giant curtain, and a blinding light floods Lion's vision. Lion's mouth falls open in absolute, unadulterated shock. The hidden room is filled with rows of breathtaking commoner dresses and coats. Lion's visual interface goes completely wild as a dozen dings drop on screen, revealing a star-studded lineup of 2-star Mastercraft items. So, Andre's rundown boutique is basically hiding a treasure trove of high-tier gear. Our guy looks at the system screens floating over the clothes, realizing that even with low-quality fabrics, Andre's completion rates are practically perfect. He starts imagining what a craftsman with this level of baseline talent could achieve if they had access to legendary top-tier materials. He turns to Andre and delivers the pitch directly, stating he wants the tailor to design the official outfits for his upcoming ceremony. Andre immediately panics, warning Lion that wearing clothes designed by a disgraced outcast will make him the laughingstock of the high nobility, but Lion is completely unfazed. He holds up 3 fingers, demanding 3 custom-matching outfits by the day of the ceremony. He looks Andre dead in the eyes, asking if he has the drive to pull it off. He promises to take full responsibility for any social backlash, basically asking the tailor if he is ready to take a leap of faith. Andre clenches his fist as his professional pride flares up. The opportunity to work with elite fabrics is every craftsman's dream. He drops his anxious posture and passionately accepts the offer, promising to deliver a masterpiece if Lion gives the word. He immediately grabs his drawing pad and a quill, asking what specific design details the young master wants. Lion starts listing off vague, classic client demands about wanting something clean but elegant, cohesive yet unique, and modern but traditional, leaving the poor tailor sweating. Then Andre stops, his face turning pale as he realizes that cohesive family outfits means the fearsome patriarch Patrick Asteri will also be wearing his work. He reminds Lion that the high mages of the Empire utterly despise him, but Lion calmly asks what their opinions have to do with his family. Andre is stunned, realizing that nobody in the secular world would ever dare criticize a designer backed by the sheer magical power of House Asteri. Exactly. Andre's artistic fire is fully lit, and he vows to pour his entire soul into the project. He asks if Lion has a specific fabric style in mind, and our guy reaches into his bag to pull out his trump card. He slams a massive leather-bound book onto the desk. Andre's eyes nearly pop out of his skull as he recognizes the legendary Asteri fabric catalog. He looks at the gold embossed cover like it is a divine scripture, begging for permission to touch the pages. Lion casually tells him to go ahead. Andre slowly opens the ledger and a literal golden glow fills the room. The catalog contains samples of mythical textiles like select elven hair fabric and magical weaver-infused threads that most humans only hear about in fairy tales. Lion asks if any of them catch his eye, and Andre gasps that he is in love with every single page. But then, Andre's hand suddenly freezes over one specific plain-looking blue swatch. Lion asks what is wrong, and Andre explains that back in his glory days, a highly prestigious noblewoman used to commission clothes using this exact material. He notes that the fabric was completely unavailable on the open market, and his sensory memory never forgets a texture. Lion leans in to inspect the blue swatch closely. The system dings, revealing the item description, Archmage's Devoted Love, a 3-star worsted yarn specially crafted by the Grand Mage for his daughter, packed with high-tier impact and elemental protection magic. Lion connects the dots. The Archmage is Patrick, and the daughter was Lion's late mother. This fabric was hand-woven by his grandfather as a protective gift for his daughter, which explains why it completely disappeared from the market after her passing. Lion decides that if they are going to wear cohesive family outfits, this is the exact fabric they need to use. Andre eagerly agrees. Andre grabs his measuring tape, preparing to take Lion's dimensions. Suddenly, the door swings open and Lixel walks into the shop, apologizing for arriving late with some additional supplies. Lion is confused, and Andre looks out the door as a massive commotion starts echoing from the street. They look outside, and their jaws collectively hit the floor. The street is packed with an entire merchant caravan of wagons dumping massive wooden crates directly onto the grass. Lixel calmly explains that since his beloved older brother found a designer he likes, he decided to secure some proper workspace gear. They start unboxing gold-trimmed dress mannequins and state-of-the-art magic sewing machines. Lixel stands there in his pristine white coat, stating that this level of financial and material support is only natural for an Asteri family event. The kid literally bought out a luxury supply warehouse because he wanted to be helpful. Lion sweat drops, asking Andre if he is okay switching to these incredibly expensive new tools, but Andre is already crying tears of joy. He is completely overwhelmed. He shouts that he would be deeply honored to replace every single dusty tool in his shop with these legendary magic instruments, looking like he just won the lottery. After taking Lion's measurements, Andre escorts them back into the main showroom. He promises to deliver a masterwork, and Lion warns him not to work himself to death. Then, Lion mentions he has one small personal favor to ask. He asks if Andre could teach him the basics of tailoring whenever he has some spare time. Both Lixel and Andre freeze in complete disbelief. Lixel immediately tries to shut down the idea, frantically listing all the dangerous accidents that can happen with sharp needles and magic sewing machines. He is acting like a protective parent. Lion laughs, explaining he just wants to get a basic feel for the craft rather than jump straight to advanced projects. Andre asks why a high noble is interested in manual labor. Lion explains that to truly appreciate the soul and intent that a master craftsman pours into their work, one must first understand the fundamental mechanics of the craft itself. Andre is absolutely blown away by the sheer depth of Lion's respect for the trade, tearfully agreeing that every stitch indeed carries a profound purpose. He formally bows, promising to teach the young master everything he knows without holding back. He suggests starting by measuring Lixel first, telling Lion to feel free to explore the workshop and play around with the basic materials. The sun starts setting over the renovated workshop. Lion walks through the rows of fabric, marveling at the sheer quality of the space. He picks up a rough, worn cotton pants pattern. The system warns him that the fabric quality is extremely low, with loose threads sticking out. But our guy has a plan. He wants to see how the stitching mechanics work. He decides that using the automated magic sewing machines right away would feel like using a cheat code, so he opts for traditional hand sewing to build his baseline muscle memory. He opens his inventory and pulls out the premium artisan's repair kit he got as a freebie bonus from the magic shop. He sits down at the desk, taking a deep breath as he prepares to thread the needle. The second his fingers touch the tools, the needle suddenly flashes with a bright magical light, completely changing its structural appearance. The thread literally glides through the eye of the needle entirely on its own. Lion is amazed by the passive automation features of his magic gear. He settles into his chair and begins the sewing process. He starts making his first neat stitches, surprised by how incredibly engaging the craft is. He expected the micromanagement of hand sewing to be frustrating and tedious, but the rhythmic motion actually brings a deep meditative calm to his mind. Suddenly, a blue holographic guideline glows directly over the fabric, showing him the perfect trajectory for his stitches. The system dings, revealing his completion progress is already climbing rapidly toward 80%. He holds up the finished cotton trousers, thoroughly impressed by his first attempt. Suddenly, a gasp echoes from the doorway. Andre and Lixel have returned from their measurement session. Andre runs over, his eyes wide with disbelief as he inspects the hand-sewn seams. The master tailor inspects the stitching, noting that while it is slightly uneven in some areas, the execution is incredibly precise for a beginner. And then, Andre's artistic switch is flipped. He starts running around the room, flailing his arms in a dramatic state of absolute creative hysteria. He shouts that hand sewing is the absolute soul of bespoke formal wear, realizing he spent so much time churning out ready-made clothes that he completely forgot the foundational art of the needle. He goes into full-blown flame aura design mode, screaming about how he is going to alter the shoulders and collars of the Asteri outfits. Lion and Lixel just stand there, watching the designer get completely lost in his own world. Lion smiles, suggesting to Lixel that they should probably sneak out and head home while the tailor is still in his creative trance. Lixel agrees, reminding Lion that they have a formal dinner scheduled with their grandfather Patrick tonight. The tailoring prep phase is officially locked in. Back at the Asteri castle, the butler enters the patriarch's study, calling out to Marquise Patrick. He informs him that the young masters have arrived in the dining hall and asks if they should head down. Patrick signs his final document, quietly agreeing. They walk down the grand, candlelit corridors of the mansion. The butler comments that it is remarkably rare for the three of them to sit down for a family dinner. Patrick sighs, stating that he does not actually enjoy being a constant workaholic. He complains that he only takes on all this administrative stress to protect his grandchildren, while the butler politely notes that Patrick is practically running the entire imperial administration by himself anyway. Patrick grumbles about the imperial royals working an old man to the bone, pointing out that 50 years have passed since the Great Demon War, yet they still treat him like an unpaid intern. He laments that he just wants to spend his remaining days peacefully with his family. The butler dryly reminds him that an 8-circle-high mage has the lifespan of an elf, so he has plenty of centuries left. Patrick clears his throat, ignoring the logic, and approaches the heavy dining room doors. The doors slide open. Patrick puts on his stern, majestic patriarch mask, but internally, his mind is filled with quiet, protective thoughts about his late daughter's legacy. He wants to keep his grandchildren completely isolated from the dangerous political games of the Empire, thinking that to protect Lion's peace, he must ensure the boy's magical potential remains hidden from the temple and the crown. But the second he looks up, Lion greets him with a massive, warm, angelic smile that completely melts his icy resolve. Lion looks at the massive feast laid out across the long table, thinking it looks slightly too extravagant for a quiet family dinner. Lixel proudly reveals that since the family is finally gathering, he personally instructed the head chef to prepare a special high-end menu. Lion stares at the lavish plates. He starts remembering his past life where he was so overworked he constantly skipped meals, while in this life, Patrick was always dining at the palace and Lion was bedridden. He looks at the empty seat opposite Lixel, suddenly realizing that his younger brother must have spent years eating these massive, extravagant dinners completely by himself. He looks at Lixel's quiet, slightly flushed face, feeling a deep wave of sympathy. Lion smiles and says they definitely need to make these family dinners a regular habit. Lixel looks up, his eyes wide with surprise. Lion realizes how incredibly lonely and isolating it must have been for Lixel to carry the family's expectations completely alone in this massive, quiet castle. He clenches his hand under the table, resolving to use his relationship grindset to fix this family's emotional communication gap once and for all. He vows to make sure his brother never has to eat a lonely meal again. Meanwhile, Patrick sits down at the head of the table. Patrick signals the start of the meal, and they all begin digging in. The sound of high-end silverware clinking fills the quiet room as they cut into their steaks. Patrick asks Lixel if his recent administrative and magical assignments are progressing smoothly, and Lixel confidently promises to handle them flawlessly. But after that brief exchange, the room goes completely silent again. The heavy noble dining atmosphere is incredibly awkward. Lixel glances at Lion, realizing this silent, cold routine is exactly what his brother wanted to avoid. Patrick continues eating, silently stressing over what kind of legendary gift he should prepare for Lion's upcoming ceremony. Lixel decides to take the initiative, clearing his throat to address his grandfather. He asks Patrick if he ever crafted a highly specific custom fabric for their late mother. Patrick instantly freezes mid-sip, his eyes widening. He quickly takes a gulp of wine, sweating as he flatly claims he has absolutely no idea what they are talking about. He is completely defensive. Lion observes the reaction, noting that bringing up their late mother is clearly a highly uncomfortable topic for the old man. Lion decides to gently guide the conversation. He explains that he met a highly skilled tailor today who showed him a legendary fabric sample preserved within the Asteri archives. He turns to Lixel, asking if he remembers the glowing blue fabric sample from the catalog. Lixel nods, confirming he remembers. Lion continues, explaining that the tailor recognized the exact material, mentioning that a highly prestigious noblewoman used to wear outfits crafted from it during his glory days. Lion gives Patrick a gentle smile, stating that since the unique material was found strictly within the family estate, he wondered if that noblewoman was actually their late mother. Patrick stares at his plate in silence. Lion realizes that the memory of their mother is a topic the entire household has been actively burying to avoid the pain of grief, but he knows that avoiding the topic forever only keeps the family isolated. He believes that matching family outfits are the perfect tool to break down these emotional walls, using the ceremony to heal their relationships. Patrick slowly lowers his wine glass, his voice softening. He admits that Lion's deduction is correct. He confirms that he did indeed hand-weave that protective blue fabric himself. The brothers look at him in surprise, and Lixel asks what drove him to craft such a legendary material. Patrick looks at his wine glass, stating there was no grand political reason. As a father, he was simply worried about his only daughter. He explains that he was terrified she would get hurt or suffer in the harsh, freezing northern weather, so he hand-selected the finest magical wool, imbued every single thread with high-tier defensive magic, and had it woven into a protective garments. He sighs softly, admitting he had no idea there was any of the fabric left in the family vaults. Lixel stares at his plate, deeply moved by the realization of how much love and care his grandfather poured into their mother's safety. Patrick looks at his grandson, realizing his own silent grief had inadvertently left his grandchildren feeling lonely and abandoned in this massive castle all these years. Lion happily interrupts the heavy mood, declaring that they are going to use that exact protective fabric to make their matching formal wear for the ceremony. Patrick smiles, saying there is plenty of it left. Then, Lion asks when Patrick is free to visit the tailor's workshop for his personal measurements. Patrick freezes, his eyes popping. He asks if the matching outfits were not just meant for the two brothers. Lion gives him a bright, mischievous smile, stating that the patriarch must absolutely wear the matching design with them. Patrick sweats, completely cornered by the wholesome family pressure. Lixel quickly suggests that since the family head is busy, they can simply invite the tailor to the castle to perform the measurements. Patrick surrenders entirely, clearing his throat and telling them to do as they wish. Lion lets out a bright, victorious laugh. Our guy is celebrating internally. He successfully bypassed his grandfather's atrocious fashion choices, secured a legendary protective uniform, and finally got the family talking again. He can finally focus on preparing for the coming-of-age ceremony without worrying about a visual disaster. Over the next few weeks, everything progresses smoothly. Andre visits the castle regularly, tearfully taking the majestic patriarch's measurements under the watchful eyes of the servants. The castle is decorated with elegant silk banners and floral arrangements as the ceremony approaches. With Patrick and Lixel fully supporting him, Lion has absolutely no administrative chores left to worry about. Since he has nothing but free time, he decides to dedicate his days to mastering the tailoring skill. He locks himself in his workshop, hand-sewing a complete, highly detailed formal shirt from scratch. He finishes the final, perfect him, fully expecting a glorious gold-embossed system notification. He sits there waiting for the prompt confirming he unlocked the tailoring talent at apprentice level 1, but the screen remains completely blank. He is thoroughly confused. He completed the shirt flawlessly without using any automated magic sewing machines, so he cannot understand why the talent won't awaken. His brain enters full panic mode. He slams his hands on the desk, terrified that the universe has finally found a crafting skill he is physically incapable of learning. He tries to calm his racing thoughts, reasoning that if he had zero talent for crafting, his cooking skill would have failed first. He starts analyzing the system's hidden mechanics. He unlocked blacksmithing with Mudu's guidance and potion brewing with Elvia's recipes. He wonders if the system strictly requires a formal teacher or a specific high-tier tool to trigger the initial talent awakening. He clutches his head in absolute comedic despair, screaming at the ceiling about his broken game interface. Suddenly, the door opens, and Elvia steps into the room, calmly announcing that the tailor Andre has officially arrived. Lion looks up, asking if the formal outfits are finally finished. Elvia looks slightly concerned. She explains that while the clothes appeared to be completed flawlessly, Andre's facial expression was highly unusual. She warns Lion that the tailor looked deeply shaken, as if some critical emergency had just compromised the entire project. The screen cuts to black on her ominous warning, leaving our guy's perfect ceremony plans hanging by a single thread. He pushes the heavy doors open, wondering what on earth could have caused the dramatic tailor to panic. The second he steps inside, a blinding golden light hits him like a flashbang. Andre did not just bring some designs, he literally transported his entire high-end boutique and multiple mannequins directly into the castle parlor. Lion looks around the sparkling room, completely baffled as to how one non-magical tailor managed to move this much inventory by himself. He greets Andre politely. Andre steps forward, presenting the completed formal attire like a legendary item drop. Lion slides his arms into the sleek white tailcoat, inspecting the floral gold cuffs. The system dings, revealing the master tailor's finest formal suit, a gorgeous 3-star masterpiece that stands as one of the most elite garments in the entire empire. But as Lion admires the fit in the mirror, he notices Andre is holding his hands together in deep, anxious contemplation. Suddenly, a glaring red system prompt pops up on his screen. The suit is indeed exceptional, but it warns him it cannot be worn to the ceremony because something critical is still missing. Lion turns to the mirror, analyzing the overall look. He immediately spots the problem. The neckline is completely bare, leaving a massive visual gap between the collar and the vest. The outfit itself is flawlessly tailored, but it lacks a strong central focal point. It needs a tie. He starts listing the options: a necktie, a bow tie, or a cravat. He realizes that even in a fantasy setting, proper accessorizing is the difference between a main character and an NPC. He visualizes the family dynamic. His grandfather Patrick needs a formal, highly dignified tie to project his authority, while Lixil needs a youthful bow tie to match his prodigy status. But before Lion can discuss this with the designer, Andre steps forward, looking like he is about to deliver a tearful confession. The tailor asks for a massive, unprecedented favor, begging Lion to hand sew the ties and complete the embroidery himself. Lion is completely flabbergasted. Andre frantically promises to teach him every secret of the trade, from basic silk cutting to advanced embroidery techniques. Lion hesitates, pointing out that having a complete amateur tamper with a master craftsman's work is basically a visual crime. He asks if there is a deeper reason behind this bizarre request. Andre looks down, explaining that when he was taking the patriarch's measurements, he realized that the noblewoman he once made clothes for was actually Lion's mother. He recalls that despite his low social standing as an illegitimate outcast, the terrifying Grand Mage Patrick had personally thanked him for making his daughter happy. It was in that exact moment that the tailor understood the truth. Both then and now, clothes crafted for the people Patrick loves hold a profound emotional meaning for the old Grand Mage. So, if the patriarch hand-wove the magical defense threads for his daughter, it is only fitting that Lion's hands put the final personal touches on these garments. Andre gently places his hand over Lion's chest, stating that these clothes need a family's touch, something that even the most legendary master craftsman in the world cannot provide. Lion is deeply touched. He realizes that making beautiful clothes is about much more than just a high system completion rate. Since the tailor has gone to such lengths to be considerate of his family's grief, Lion decides he has to lock in and give this project everything he has got. He officially accepts the quest, and Andre eagerly leads him to the workbench to discuss the accessories. Lion grabs a sketchbook, telling him he already has a perfect idea. Andre looks at the sketch, instantly translating Lion's modern ideas. Lion wants Patrick to project refined, masculine dignity, while Lixil's bow tie should look youthful yet sophisticated. Lion adds that he wants the design to make it immediately clear to the entire empire that Lixil is the official, proud heir of the Asteri family. As for his own outfit, Lion decides to focus on theirs first before figuring out his own accessories. Andre agrees and suggests starting with a basic necktie. Andre begins explaining the structural anatomy of a necktie, pointing out the bar tack and the small sword-like ends. Lion starts giggling at the sword-like terminology, joking that they should definitely keep that comparison a secret from their grandfather, since Patrick has a legendary hatred for the local swordmaster noble family. Lion notices Andre is bypassing the standard interfacing phase, and Andre explains that high-grade silk naturally holds its pressed shape without any cheap synthetic backing. Lion touches the smooth silk, marveling at how different premium noble materials feel compared to his cheap practice fabrics. The lesson begins, and Andre's face is glowing with absolute passionate energy. Lion takes his first hand-sewn stitches, and the system immediately chimed. The description is hilariously brutal. It is titled, "A Necktie Too Good for Its Maker," pointing out that the material is far too premium for his low-tier skills and that any real tailor can spot the flaws instantly. Andre tries to politely humor him, but Lion can see right through it. They move on to the embroidery phase. Lion wants to embroider their official family crest, explaining that he wants the gold leaves connecting to a single branch to symbolize how their family will remain connected forever. Andre is practically on the verge of tears, deeply moved by the profound symbolism. He explains that the absolute key to embroidery is texture, instructing Lion on how to make the leaf patterns look natural and refined. Lion asks for 3 days, promising to lock himself in his room and finish every single piece by the deadline. Andre has complete, unquestioning faith in his potential. We cut to a few days later. Lion is sitting at his desk, let out a sharp cry as he accidentally pricks his finger again. He has spent the last 72 hours sewing like a complete madman, his fingers covered in tiny needle pricks, but his visual screens are still displaying the same depressing results. It is ordinary. The embroidery is nothing special. He deliberately avoided using his magic repair kit or any system guidelines, stubbornly believing that he will never actually improve if he relies solely on automated game assists. The system mocks him again, calling his latest creation a slightly ordinary necktie with faint traces of amateur blood on it. Lion leans over his desk, feeling the physical exhaustion of the crafting grind. His shoulders are screaming, his eyes are completely bloodshot, and he is starting to feel that classic corporate urge to just give up and deliver mid-tier work. But then he looks at the blank suit hanging across the room. He grips the white silk, telling himself he cannot give up now when his family's dignity is on the line. Suddenly, his hand begins to glow with a brilliant, warm golden light. The system screen explodes with sparkles. The prompt announces, "New talent, tailoring awakened." Through tireless effort and the genuine joy you found amid blood and pain, a new talent has awakened. His tailoring proficiency officially reaches apprentice level 1. Lion lets out a victorious laugh, realizing his relentless grind finally paid off. He immediately rides the momentum, cutting silk and hot-pressing the seams with insane speed. The notifications flood his screen. Tailoring proficiency reaches level 2. Achievement unlocked, rewarding him with 3,000 shillings. Tailoring proficiency reaches level 3. He pauses, staring at his glowing hands as a major gaming realization hits him. He realizes his system's talent awakening mechanics are directly tied to the level of urgency and genuine necessity behind the item he is making. When his blacksmithing talent awakened, he desperately needed tools to farm his potions. When his cooking talent awakened, he desperately needed food for the fire spirit. His tailoring skill refused to unlock during his casual practice sessions because he was not facing a real crisis where he absolutely needed a perfect family tie. He slams his hand on his fabric drawer. Now that his baseline talent is active, it is time to build his masterpiece. He cuts the silk without any magic guidelines, his hands moving with the smooth, fluid precision of a seasoned craftsman. He finishes the tie, and the system dings, premium necktie, a 1-star item that perfectly matches the high-end material. But the sparkles do not stop. The screen announces that his passive talent has officially triggered on the final stitch. Lion lets out a triumphant shout, raising his glowing needle into the air. He begins embroidering the gold leaf design onto the silk. The golden threads glow with a brilliant, magical light as the crest manifests on the tie. The system dings, finest necktie. A 3-star masterpiece that transforms a simple white accessory into an eye-catching work of art. The description confirms the quality is almost unbelievable for an apprentice tailor, declaring it a masterpiece worthy of being displayed in an imperial museum. Lion gently drapes the completed gold leaf necktie over Patrick's dark formal vest. A massive wave of magic energy erupts as the two matching pieces fuse into a single cohesive set. The final system prompt pops up and Lion's eyes widen in absolute awe. His combined crafting efforts have successfully produced his very first 4-star legendary item, the Master Tailor's finest formal suit set. Lion reviews the item description and realizes the set has actual passive stats. Equipped, it permanently maintains the user's body temperature despite external weather changes, grants immunity to moderate physical and magical impacts, and applies a passive aura of the Asteri family that commands instant noble authority. The system reveals his progress toward the Great Tailor achievement is now at 1 out of 3. Lion realizes that if he finishes Lixel's and his own outfits, he can clear the entire questline in no time. He tells himself to stay calm and take it steady as he prepares the next batch of silk. He neatly slices through the high-end fabric, his movements completely confident. He hand sews Lixel's bow tie, perfectly centering a polished gold gemstone as the focal point. The system dings, updating his achievement progress to 2 out of 3. Lixel's legendary set is officially complete. Now, our guy stands in front of the mannequins, realizing his own outfit is the final puzzle piece. He wants his design to look unique without clashing with the formal authority of his grandfather's necktie or the youthful sophistication of Lixel's bow tie. Suddenly, a creative spark hits him. He decides to cut a long necktie into a modern stick tie, a sleek, short necktie fastened with a central jewel. He sketches the design in his pad, planning to make the central gemstone the absolute highlight of the outfit. He needs a suitable jewel, so he heads over to his grandfather's legacy storage chests to search for a fitting accessory. He opens the chest, and a glittering array of high-end noble jewelry fills his vision. He picks up a flawless, glowing violet gemstone, smiling as he realizes the deep purple hue looks exactly like his family's signature eyes. He hand sews the silk band and fastens the violet jewel directly into the center of the stick tie. It is finished. A brilliant magic circle erupts beneath his feet as the system dings with multiple alerts. He has officially unlocked the Great Tailor achievement, earning 15,000 shillings, plus an additional 10,000 shilling bonus for performing a crafting feat far beyond his current skill level. The final notification pops up and Lion lets out a massive gasp. He just gained 25,000 shillings at once, raising his total balance past the crucial 100,000 shilling threshold and officially unlocking the visual shilling shop. He is incredibly hyped to finally browse his escape gear, but the door is suddenly kicked open with a thunderous crash that startles him. Lixel steps into the room surrounded by a terrifying dark purple demonic aura. He demands to know why his older brother is still awake and sewing at midnight when the coming-of-age ceremony is literally tomorrow. Lixel is practically vibrating with rage, pointing out that Lion has been pulling all-nighters for 3 days straight. Lion panics internally, wondering how on earth his younger brother has been tracking his sleeping schedule so closely. Lixel glares at him with hollow, glowing eyes, commanding him to go to sleep immediately. Lion squeaks in pure, unadulterated terror. Suddenly, Elvia manifests from the shadows behind him, casually picking Lion up over her shoulder like a sack of potatoes while Lixel folds his arms in approval. Lion screams in comedic agony, crying that the cash shop literally just unlocked and begging them to let him browse the inventory for just 5 seconds, but his pleas are ignored as they carry him away, and the quiet night falls over the Grand Castle towers. The next afternoon, the day of the coming-of-age ceremony has officially arrived. Elvia escorts Lion down the grand hallway, praising his appearance. She comments that the custom white tailcoat and the violet stick tie suit him perfectly, and Lion smiles, glad his hard work paid off. He recalls how the master tailor Andre wept happy tears of inspiration when he saw the finished embroidery, feeling that the sleep deprivation was entirely worth it. In the shadows of the corridor, the butler watches Lion walk by, thinking about how that frail, magicless little baby has miraculously survived to celebrate his official transition into adulthood. Suddenly, Lixel walks down the corridor, looking remarkably sharp and elegant in his navy blue custom suit. He asks if his brother slept well. Lion smiles, asking if he was waiting for him, and Lixel nods. Lixel bows elegantly, declaring that he will personally escort his older brother to the main ballroom. They approach the grand double doors. The doors slide open, and a brilliant wave of light and music floods their vision. The massive ballroom is packed with the entire elite nobility of the empire. Giant crystal chandeliers glitter from the ceiling as a classical orchestra plays in the corner. The guests are already gossiping among themselves, marveling at how the decorations are far more magnificent than a standard imperial palace banquet. Some mages chuckle, whispering that the rumors about the patriarch and his eldest grandson being on terrible terms must have been complete nonsense. Suddenly, the master of ceremonies steps to the podium, loudly announcing the arrival of Marquis Patrick Asteri and the young masters. Patrick walks down the grand staircase, his majestic dark gray suit commanding instant, absolute authority over the entire room. Lixil steps down right behind him. And then, the spotlight shifts to the entrance. The crowd gasps as Lion Asteri steps into the ballroom. In his custom 4-star white suit, he looks like a literal prince descended from a fairy tale. But some of the classist noble guests start whispering behind their fans, claiming he looks entirely ordinary and is completely overshadowed by his prodigy brother's magical aura. Patrick stands next to Lion, his expression stern. Under his breath, he warns Lion to stay far away from the group of sycophants standing near the pillars, bluntly stating they are people of poor character who only want to manipulate him. Lion asks if he is secretly worried about his social life, and Patrick blushes, quickly telling him to focus on preparing his opening speech. Lion gives him a bright, reassuring laugh, promising he won't bring any shame to the prestigious family name. Lion walks up the stairs to the podium, completely ignoring the whispering flatterers. He has no intention of playing their petty noble social games. He addresses the crowd, his voice projecting throughout the massive hall. "Welcome, everyone. I am Lion Asteri, celebrating my coming of age today." He continues his speech with effortless grace, thanking the future leaders of the noble houses for traveling so far to celebrate with them. Lixil looks up, completely dazzled. The younger brother cannot believe how incredibly reliable, mature, and commanding his older brother looks on stage. The whispering guests are also starting to change their tune, muttering about how captivating the young master looks today. A noble woman whispers that while his suit looks simple on the surface, the design has a highly unique magnetic quality that completely elevates his presence. They realize that the attire has a majestic elegance in its simplicity, making his lack of mana completely irrelevant. Another guest murmurs that this design is on an entirely different level, frantically wondering which famous designer crafted such a masterpiece. Patrick crosses his arms, noting under his breath that Lion used his head to perfectly manage the crowd's expectations. Lixil asks if his brother calculated the psychological impact of the matching outfits beforehand, and Patrick smiles, noting that Lion has always been remarkably quick-witted. Lion wraps up his speech, gracefully inviting the guests to relax and enjoy the banquet until tomorrow morning. The crowd erupts into thunderous applause as Lion gives them a warm, brilliant smile. He steps down from the podium and Lixil immediately runs up, his face glowing with excitement as he praises his brother's incredible public speaking skills. Lion rubs the back of his neck, laughing that it was nothing special. In reality, delivering a speech to a crowd of dramatic nobles is incredibly easy compared to presenting a quarterly budget report to a room of angry corporate executives. Patrick approaches, stating that the direct lineage of House Asteri never fails to command respect, even without a single drop of active mana. He gives Lion a warm, proud smile, telling him he did a magnificent job. Lion bows, thanking his grandfather. The three of them walk toward the private balcony table to enjoy the dinner together. The banquet begins, and the tables are filled with premium wines and roasted meats. The classical orchestra plays a warm melody as the guests celebrate. Patrick clinks his wineglass on the table. He looks at Lion, asking if his grandson has finally decided what specific magical item he plans to bring into the dangerous library labyrinth for the coming-of-age ritual tomorrow. Patrick explains that the dynamic magical reward Lion will receive directly depends on the baseline properties of the item he carries into the maze. He explains the standard rules. Those who carry a legendary magic tome will acquire defensive spells, while those who bring a staff will unlock offensive combat formulas. Lion sips his wine, realizing that while a normal mage's path is predictable, his own lack of standard mana makes his journey a complete mystery. He looks at his grandfather with a bright, confident smile, announcing that he plans to bring a custom-grade potion he crafted entirely by himself, leaving the old Grand Mage completely stunned as our guy prepares to break the labyrinth's mechanical rules. So, we are sitting at the family dinner table during the most prestigious banquet of the year, and Lion casually announces that he is bringing a home-brewed potion into the legendary library labyrinth. Honestly, it is a big brain move on his part. He knows he has zero traditional magic talent. His outfit is literally carrying a 4-star rating because he slapped a custom necktie onto Andre's work, so he might as well bring the absolute best item he personally crafted. Patrick takes a slow sip of his wine, closes his eyes, and nods in approval, telling him it is a wise choice because the labyrinth will automatically hand out knowledge that fits his specific traits anyway. But then, Patrick's gaze goes sharp, his purple eyes narrowing as he leans in for the real question. He asks Lion straight up if he has even a single drop of interest in politics or taking over the family succession. Our guy does not even take a millisecond to think about it. He physically crosses his arms in an absolute panic, screaming no so fast it almost breaks the sound barrier. He wants absolutely zero part of that corporate noble grind. He immediately tells his grandfather that he fully expects Lixel to become the next family head. Look at Lixel's face in the background. His eyes are literally sparkling with pure brotherly devotion, crying out brother in his head like a proud puppy. Patrick turns his attention slowly over to Lixel, his face completely serious. He asks Lixel if he is prepared to cherish and protect his older brother with his entire life. Lixel does not even hesitate, placing his hand over his chest and swearing it on the absolute honor of his house and his very mana. Patrick lets out a soft sigh, muttering very well then, while the rest of the table sits there sweating bullets from the sheer intensity of the conversation. Patrick looks down at his wine glass, completely ecstatic on the inside, because the absolute biggest headache of any noble house, the brutal succession dispute, just got solved over appetizers in under 30 seconds. He starts running through the actual political landscape of the empire. Right now, the two absolute biggest external threats to House Asteri are the imperial family and the highly prestigious, blood-soaked swordsman house known as House Badentis. The imperial family is currently too busy tearing themselves apart in their own succession struggle, so they are not an active threat for the time being. The real wild card is House Badentis. They recently finished a brutal, blood-drenched succession ritual, which is basically just a fancy high society term for siblings slaughtering each other until only one is left standing. A young girl ended up bearing the weight of all that spilled blood to reconstruct the family from the ground up. Patrick tells Lion to just live his life exactly how he wants as an Asteri and avoid the Badentis house entirely. Lion, being the chaotic gamer he is, immediately asks what happens if he accidentally causes trouble. Patrick slowly lowers his fork, his face dropping into a cold shadow. However, he leans forward with glowing demonic red eyes, stating that if Lion gets himself physically hurt, he will absolutely not let it slide. Our guy is sweating buckets, realizing his grandfather would probably end him before the actual trouble even has a chance to try. Lion immediately backpedals, swearing he will live a quiet, perfectly peaceful life in the background, which finally lets them finish their luxury dinner in relative peace. The banquet officially begins, and Lion is standing by the refreshment tables, swishing his red wine like a true aristocratic businessman. He looks over at his grandfather and Lixel, who are currently surrounded by a massive horde of generic brown-nosed nobles. He realizes dealing with high society politics looks incredibly exhausting. But then, he remembers he has his own side quest to complete. He grabs a fresh glass of wine from a passing waiter, a highly calculated corporate smirk spreading across his face. It is time to start his marketing campaign. Right on cue, his very first customer approaches. A noble lady with a fancy fan asks him who on earth designed the magnificent outfit he is currently wearing. Before he can even answer, 3 more noble ladies swarm him, practically begging for the name of the tailor. Lion is completely stunned on the inside, realizing the passive attraction stat of a 4-star luxury item is absolutely no joke. The entire ballroom is practically turning their heads to look at him. But instead of gatekeeping, Lion drops his face into a highly strategic, sorrowful frown, telling them he actually has a major concern about the creator. He sighs, explaining that the master designer is actually an illegitimate child who was completely cast out of high society for the crime of selling clothes to ordinary commoners. The nobles start whispering behind their fans, noting that only the snobbish faction of the first prince cares about stupid bloodline rules like that anyway. Lion looks up toward the balcony, recalling that the second prince is also an illegitimate child. He realizes his tailor, Andre, was basically just a casualty in the silent political war between the 2 royal brothers. The crowd of nobles goes completely feral, shouting that they do not care about some stupid political exile at all, and that they only care about the absolute peak quality of the clothing itself. Lion smirks, lifting his wine glass to toast his victory. The bait has been taken. He proudly announces that the master tailor's name is Andre, and that his boutique is located in the southern part of the Asteri family territory. The noble lady's eyes go wide as she realizes Andre was under the protective grace of House Asteri this entire time. Then, Lion delivers the ultimate marketing finisher. He holds up 3 fingers, casually warning them that they better run to make a booking, because he heard there are only about 3 reservation spots left for the entire day. The crowd literally panics. But before the stampede can begin, a cold, sharp voice cuts through the entire ballroom. Hold on. The crowd parts down the middle as a silver-haired woman in a dark purple gown slowly walks forward, her heels clicking ominously against the marble floor. It is Clarentia Bedentis, the absolute head of the terrifying swordsman house. Her presence alone makes the entire temperature of the room drop by 10 degrees. The nobles in the background start whispering in absolute panic, wondering what on earth the executioner of the Bedentis house is doing here. Lion, maintaining his perfect corporate customer service smile, welcomes her. He politely asks what kind of garments she would like to order from Andre. Clarentia stands there with a completely deadpan, unreadable expression on her face. She quietly states that she wants to order a heavy-duty training uniform and some highly comfortable casual wear. Look at the nobles in the background. Their faces are completely blue, and they are literally shaking in terror. She casually explains that the training clothes she previously had are now completely ruined. An ominous blood-red memory flashes behind her, showing her standing over a literal mountain of her dead siblings' bodies with a dripping sword. Yeah, ruined is definitely one way to put it. The surrounding nobles immediately start coughing, faking back pain, screaming that they forgot to turn off their kitchen stoves, and sprinting out of the ballroom as fast as humanly possible to get away from her. In under 3 seconds, the entire crowd is gone. The background fades to a hilarious, silent gray as 2 crows fly by, leaving Lion and Clarentia standing completely alone in a massive empty space. Lion sweats a little on the inside, realizing that after surviving a literal, kin-slaying battle royale, it makes perfect sense why everyone is utterly terrified of her. But to a former corporate salaryman, a paying customer is still a customer. He instantly flips his mental salesman mode switch to maximum power, flashing her a blinding, gorgeous smile and telling her that a large custom order is absolutely fine. Clarentia, completely unfazed, asks if she needs to put down a financial deposit right now. Lion tells her they can easily arrange the financial details separately after the party ends, and she gives him a slow, approving nod. As she turns and walks away, Lion watches her go, thinking that the interaction went surprisingly smoothly despite her terrifying reputation. And just like that, the remaining luxury reservation spots are fully booked by the desperate nobles who were waiting in the wings. A cute montage pops up showing a massive stack of custom design requests, dress sketches, and suit orders flooding in for Andre's shop. A giant, heavy leather-bound reservation book drops onto the table with a heavy thud. Lion smiles, knowing Andre is going to be absolutely swimming in gold coins by tomorrow morning. Suddenly, a maid approaches Lion from behind, quietly informing him that the patriarch has sent word that the coming-of-age trial is officially prepared. Lion walks down the quiet corridor and stands before the massive gold-embossed double doors of the library labyrinth entrance. A shadow falls over him as a smug, condescending voice calls out from behind, noting that he certainly carries himself with a lot of unearned confidence. The crowd parts to reveal the first prince, Theris Solionis, standing there with a mocking smirk, alongside his quiet younger brother, Kyle. Lion puts on a fake, polite smile, thinking to himself that this orange-haired jerk knows perfectly well that Lion does not possess any active magic circles, and is purely here to watch him fail publicly. But before the prince can utter another insulting word, Lixil physically steps in front of Lion, his eyes blazing with a cold, terrifying violet light. He flatly tells the prince that there is absolutely zero reason for his older brother to feel nervous. An actual visual crackle of purple lightning sparks between Lixil and the first prince. Lion stands in the background sweat-smiling, thinking that Lixil looks exactly like their terrifying grandfather whenever he gets ready to obliterate someone. The first prince clears his throat, sweating a bit under Lixil's intense pressure, and quietly slinks back to his seat. Lion notes that while the prince is capable, he is ultimately just a spoiled, luxury-devoted scoundrel who cannot handle actual smoke. Lixil turns back to Lion, his face instantly shifting into a soft, worried younger brother. He hands over a dark leather bag containing the custom recovery potion, begging him to be incredibly careful inside. Lion smiles warmly, slinging the leather strap over his shoulder and thanking him. He looks up at the massive doors as they begin to creak open, a wave of nostalgia hitting him. He remembers sneaking into this library all the time as a kid, back when he had no talent and this dark, quiet place was his only real sanctuary from the harsh family. But now, he knows the truth. In the lore of the game, the first head of House Asteri hid a legendary world-class treasure inside this labyrinth 50 years ago after the Great Demon War. The maid presents him with a small silver needle on a purple velvet cushion. He thanks her, taking the blade in his hand. He pricks the tip of his finger, a tiny red cut opening up on his skin. A single drop of his blood falls down, hitting the intricate pattern of the carpet below. The instant his blood touches the floor, a massive glowing blue magic circle erupts beneath his feet, the ancient runes spinning rapidly in a blinding flash of light. The entire mansion begins to shake violently, dust falling from the ceiling as the heavy glass chandeliers rattle like crazy. The princes in the background look completely terrified, shouting that the library has never reacted like this before. The massive double doors slam open with a deafening boom, a vortex of pure blue light and swirling white wind pouring out into the hallway. Lion's eyes go wide in absolute shock as the physical gravity of the room completely fails, his golden hair whipping wild in the wind. The ancient magic vortex wraps around his body, dragging his soul directly into the swirling depths of the labyrinth rift. Alright, so here is the deal with the Asteri family's library labyrinth. In the original game lore, depending on the labyrinth's actual will, a player could theoretically clear the entire thing without facing any trials at all. But if you get greedy or try to physically damage the structure, it instantly turns into an inescapable maximum difficulty death dungeon. And right now, back in the banquet hall, the entire mansion is physically falling apart. The first prince is screaming in absolute terror while the second prince yells for everyone to watch out. Inside the rift, Lion is tumbling through the blue void, his golden ponytail whipping around as he frantically wonders why on earth the entrance sequence is this incredibly violent. He looks down as a blinding white light completely engulfs his vision, letting out a loud yell as he is pulled deeper into the magic portal. The raw magical pressure continues to spin him around like a ragdoll. Back in the physical hallway, Lixil is desperately reaching out toward the closed doors, screaming his brother's name in pure panic, while Patrick rushes forward behind him. Lion's consciousness completely fades to a silent, empty white void. He wonders if he is actually about to meet his end. But then, a familiar, beautiful sound echoes through his head. Tring. A glowing blue system screen appears before him, announcing that he has successfully achieved the extremely rare book labyrinth clearing achievement, and the system rewards start raining down like a casino jackpot. He gains permanent permission to read every single book in the archive, his intelligence stat permanently increases by 10, his mana permanently increases by 10, and a brand new high-purity magic mana circle is generated inside his body. Meanwhile, back in the real world, the banquet hall is in absolute shambles. High society ladies are screaming in terror as fine china and crystal wine glasses shatter all over the floor. A massive, dark purple shockwave of magical energy rips through the walls, cracking the solid stone pillars. It is absolute beautiful chaos. Nobles are running in every single direction, screaming for help, slipping on spilled wine, and desperately looking for the marquise to save them. Suddenly, a massive heavy iron chandelier snaps from the high ceiling, plunging straight down toward a crowd of panicked guests below. A noble lady looks up and screams, closing her eyes as the heavy metal is about to crush her, but a brilliant glowing yellow hexagonal shield suddenly manifests in midair, completely blocking the impact. The nobles look up in sheer awe, crying out in relief as they realize it is Patrick's legendary protective barrier holding up the entire collapsing ceiling. Patrick stands there looking like an absolute raid boss, his dark coat flowing around him as swirling yellow mana circles rise from his hands. He barks an immediate order to his head knight, Rixon, telling him to head straight to the banquet hall and safely guide all the guests out under the active protective barriers. Lixil comes sprinting down the ruined corridor, his face pale with worry as he calls out to his grandfather. He demands to know what on earth happened to the entrance. Patrick grimly explains that the library labyrinth has somehow gone completely out of control, which is why he is evacuating the guests. Patrick immediately asks if the royal princes are accounted for. Lixil nods, explaining that they are perfectly safe because he personally cast a high-grade protective shield over them before running here. The first prince looks completely rattled in the background. Patrick lets out a breath, noting that it is a relief that everyone is physically unharmed, though the entire corridor is covered in piles of shattered stone debris. Patrick turns to Lixel, ordering him to immediately coordinate the healers for any minor injuries and prepare a secure resting area for the remaining noble families. He states that he will stay behind alone to personally guard the volatile labyrinth entrance. Lixel is completely stunned, his face dropping as he shouts, "Pardon?" Lixel grabs Patrick's arm, arguing that it is far too dangerous for him to stay alone, and demands to stand guard alongside him. Patrick firmly tells him no. He places a heavy, white-gloved hand on Lixel's shoulder, reminding him with a serious voice that as the officially chosen next head of House Asteri, he must do his absolute duty to protect the people first. The two princes approach them through the rubble. The first prince nervously warns Patrick that the labyrinth's state is completely unknown, but Patrick just lets out a confident chuckle, asking if they seriously think a minor magical hiccup like this poses any real danger to an 8th Circle Grand Mage. Patrick looks down at Lixel, his gaze softening as he tells him to go quickly and manage the estate. The first prince sighs in relief, saying they should leave because Lion is probably perfectly safe inside anyway, and the second prince quietly agrees to help with the evacuation. Lixel clenches his fist so hard his glove crinkles, staring down at the floor in bitter frustration as he whispers his brother's name. He hates being forced to leave him behind. He finally turns and guides the royal princes out of the ruined hall, leaving a single pair of boots standing in the shadows of the doorway. Patrick watches them go, his face darkening as he thinks to himself that the labyrinth's volatile energy is far too dangerous, and if Lixel got swept up in it, the family's future would be completely ruined. A sharp, clear clicking sound echoes behind him. "You are staying behind, even in a massive emergency like this?" Patrick turns his head slowly to see Clarentia Bedentis standing there, her blue eyes completely calm amidst the absolute destruction. He asks her why on earth she did not leave with the other escaping nobles. Clarentia looks at him with a deadpan expression, noting that Patrick seems entirely certain that Lion is still alive inside. She steps closer, her sharp gaze cutting through him as she points out that Patrick is acting as if he already knows the exact outcome of this entire disaster. Patrick stays completely silent. Clarentia quietly announces that she is going to stay and help him guard the rift. Patrick's eyes narrow as he asks for her actual reason. Politically speaking, it would be infinitely more beneficial for the rival Bedentis house if the Asteri heir died in a tragic accident today. Clarentia casually brushes a strand of her silver-blue hair behind her ear, stating that she already placed a highly important custom clothing order through him. She blunt force explains that she absolutely loathes having her personal schedules disrupted by random events, so she will just wait nearby until he returns. Talk about some extreme dedication to a custom wardrobe. As she walks over to the corner, a dark purple shadow suddenly erupts from the floor behind Patrick, and the beautiful, rejuvenated form of Elvia teleports into the room. Elvia watches Clarentia go with a knowing smile, murmuring that the young Bedentis girl's raw insight is far from ordinary. Patrick just lets out a tired grunt. He orders Elvia to immediately set up a high-tier shadow barrier around the entire perimeter of the labyrinth entrance. Elvia raises her pale hand, dark, crackling purple void energy swirling around her fingers as she begins to manifest the barrier. A massive, glowing honeycomb pattern of dark magic seals off the hallway. Patrick crosses his arms, stating that absolutely no word of this incident must leak to the outside world. He pulls out his golden pocket watch, clicking the latch open as it begins to spin with bright yellow magic light. He says they will focus entirely on stabilizing the physical outside of the rift now. He looks down at the watch, his face shadowed with intense determination, whispering that this way, Lion will at least have a clear escape route back home. Meanwhile, we cut to a completely different scene. A bright, gorgeous blue sky with fluffy white clouds and a single boot lazily kicking up in the air. It is a literal paradise. A stunning green meadow covered in thousands of glowing purple and yellow flowers, with a peaceful voice singing a happy tune. A beautiful blue butterfly lands gently on a white daisy. And lying flat on his back in the middle of the grass is Lion, looking like he is currently on a luxury spring break vacation. He stares up at the sky, holding his forehead in absolute confusion as he mutters that this situation is driving him completely insane. The glowing achievement screen is still floating right in front of his face. He holds up a ancient glowing leather slate in his hand, whining that he has absolutely zero idea what he actually did to clear this legendary super hard dungeon. He sits up in the flower grass, trying to recall the exact original game mechanics from In the World. He realizes that in the game, this peaceful flower meadow was the official reward claim zone, and since the labyrinth is technically marked as cleared, he is completely safe from any danger. A holographic system prompt pops up in front of him, asking, "Would you like to shatter the dungeon's illusion? YES or NO?" Chibi Lion stands there scratching his head, remembering that in the game, you just had to press YES to claim the prize. He stops, his eyes going wide as a massive realization hits his brain, which means he looks around the empty meadow. The original talentless lion came in and out of this library archive hundreds of times without ever triggering a single magic event. The absolute only variable that has changed since then, is it his mana? No, that is completely impossible. His active mana pool only went up by a single point. If it was purely about the quantity of mana, his grandfather and Lixil would have been treating this ancient trial like their personal living room. And Patrick would never have been able to hide his ultimate treasure here if just any powerful mage could easily walk in. Lion touches his chin, his heart skipping a beat as he gasps out loud. What if the trigger is directly related to the fact that his soul is currently possessing this body? He looks out over the beautiful rolling hills, recalling his grandfather's exact words. Patrick said he enshrined the legendary treasure here 50 years ago, right after ending the Great Demon War alongside the legendary hero. An image of the legendary hero standing victorious on a dark ruined battlefield flashes in his mind. Lion's face goes completely pale with shock. Huh? This labyrinth cleared the exact millisecond his blood touched the magic circle. Unlike the original talentless lion, this is his absolute first time physically entering this space since his modern soul took over. What if the ancient magic of the labyrinth is not recognizing him as Lion Asteri at all? What if it is recognizing his soul as someone else entirely? He runs through the logic. The Great Demon War is the exact historical setting of the game In the World. The players themselves are the ones who became the hero, fought the demon lords, and saved the entire fantasy continent. His eyes go wide, his hand flying to his mouth in absolute disbelief. If the ultimate treasure Patrick enshrined here belongs to the legendary hero of the game, then that means it is actually his own custom character's personal endgame item. The scene fades to a beautifully detailed illustration of Patrick's golden clockwork pocket watch, surrounded by massive spinning gold brass gears. The ultimate player reward is finally within his grasp. So, Lion is currently standing in a field of magical flowers, processing the fact that the grand treasure hidden deep inside his family's highly guarded dungeon actually belongs to his old game character. He reasons that since he is technically the original owner, the system probably flagged his entrance as a simple item retrieval rather than a hostile raid, which is why the trial cleared instantly. But knowing you own the prize and actually getting your hands on it are two completely different things, especially when you are a low-level mage trapped inside high-tier illusion magic. He can't just sit here and wait for rescue, meaning his only real option is to find a loophole in the system and break out by force. He takes a step forward, his boot lightly brushing against a small cluster of white daisies. He pauses, looking down at the petals, and his appraisal skill immediately pops up a detailed description box for the white flower, noting that only one can grow per designated sector. He scans the surrounding flora, and the system quickly flags the yellow flowers and purple grass with similar strict environmental rules. He rubs his chin, realizing that if these plants are physically incapable of growing next to each other naturally, then this entire meadow was artificially designed as a giant, highly structured security grid. To find the escape key, he just needs to locate the one specific spot on the map where the gardener clearly broke the rules. His eyes go wide as he scans the horizon. And right there, on the edge of the hill, is a dense cluster of white, yellow, and purple plants all growing together in a single patch. He walks over to the spot, takes a deep breath, and closes his eyes to focus. He lets his consciousness slide into the rhythmic sound of his own heartbeat, aligning his internal energy with the space around him. A brilliant, celestial magic crest flares to life over his chest, and the system confirms his mana circle is fully operational, granting him access to his core statistics. He concentrates, channeling the warm flow of energy directly into his eyes, causing his pupils to glow with a sharp purple light. A notification pops up confirming he has successfully enhanced his specialized vision skill, with a strict 10-minute timer ticking down. Looking through his enhanced eyes, the beautiful meadow suddenly transforms into a deadly minefield of swirling red magical nodes. He carefully steps around them, realizing that almost every spot where the plants are clumped together is actually a highly volatile trap designed to blast him into oblivion. He smiles, completely unfazed by the threat of instant vaporization, and decides to head a bit deeper into the sector. He walks calmly through the field, the wind whipping his golden hair as his eyes trace the invisible magical currents. His boot clicks against the earth, and the system suddenly glitches with a sharp alert. The enhanced vision bypasses the illusion entirely, revealing the true name of the hidden sector right before his eyes. He drops to one knee beside a glowing blue spiral of energy, noting that the physical source of the illusion's magic thread is buried directly beneath the grass. But since he lacks the raw destructive power to break the thread with standard spells, he decides it is finally time to open up his highly anticipated shilling shop. A glorious gold embossed catalog screen pops up, confirming he has officially unlocked the bronze tier after crossing the 100,000 shilling mark. He flips through the holographic pages, zeroing in on the newly unlocked survival tab. The catalog features an emergency ejection chair for a casual 3 million shillings and a rusty key with a tragic 20% success rate for a cool million. Our guy is sweating, wondering if this entire system is just a massive scam. He puts his hands on his hips, exasperatedly asking the floating screen if there is a search filter that only shows items he can actually afford. The system chimes happily, presenting a filter prompt. He sets the parameters to show everything under 120,000 shillings, sorted from lowest to highest price. The refresh list displays high-end magic seasonings, premium beast feed, and netherworld repair kits, none of which are particularly useful for digging up an ancient treasure. But then he scrolls down and spots a magic detector alongside a pair of simple blue craft scissors with a massive 99% first-time buyer discount. The magic detector is far too expensive, but the cheap scissors are permanently bound and possess the unique ability to snip through any magical flow that lacks a soul. He presses his finger against the glowing orange purchase button. Gold particles erupt around him as the purchase goes through, though he can't help but cry a little on the inside about how fast his hard-earned savings just vanished. He holds the plain metallic scissors in his hands, praying that this budget tool is enough to get the job done. He looks down at the swirling blue magical currents, ready to unearth the source. He pulls a small hand trowel from his bag, proudly noting that his endless days of manual weeding and gathering have turned his arm strength into absolute peak physical form. He begins digging into the dirt like a human backhoe, dirt flying everywhere as he tears through the roots. But a red warning screen suddenly pops up, informing him that his enhanced vision skill has exactly 1 minute remaining. He stops, gasping in absolute shock as he realizes how much time he wasted shopping. His trowel suddenly hits a solid metallic surface with a loud ringing sound. He yells in excitement, casting his tool aside and clawing at the dirt with his bare hands. His fingers lock around the heavy gold handle of a solid container. He pulls it free, lifting a beautiful, ancient locked chest wrapped in glowing blue magical bindings, looking exactly like a classic high-tier RPG chest. The 10-second countdown timer begins flashing red in his vision, and he quickly positions his scissors over the thick, glowing blue thread. The steel blades snap shut, clean through the magical flow. The timer hits 0, the skill enhancement ends, and the blue magical ribbon dissolves into a brilliant burst of gold particles. A grand golden system prompt appears, asking if he wants to claim his rightful reward. He clicks confirm, and the chest is immediately bound to his soul and stored away in his inventory. He smiles, knowing that the soul-binding function proves without a doubt that this gear belonged to his original character. But before he can even try to inspect the contents, a dark, heavy screen overrides his system, announcing the activation of an unskippable story mode. His face pales as the red warning text informs him that this specific sequence cannot be skipped. He barely has time to scream before the physical flower meadow dissolves into a dark, swirling void, dragging his consciousness away. Meanwhile, back in the physical world, the heavy double doors of the library labyrinth remain locked tight. A tense meeting is currently taking place in the grand hallway, surrounded by armed guards and high-ranking mages. Patrick stands before Lixel, asking him if the public cleanup of the disaster has been handled properly. Lixel confirms they successfully framed the massive magical shockwave as a simple, random earthquake. He adds that he has already secured silence pledges from the imperial princes, and Clarentia Bedentis has personally guaranteed that no rumors will escape from her house. Patrick closes his eyes in relief, quietly thinking that keeping the first prince quiet was surprisingly easy due to the boy's absolute incompetence. An elite advisor steps forward, asking if they have managed to secure the boundaries against the Holy Temple and the criminal underworld. The advisor confirms both avenues were locked down before any leak could occur. Patrick nods slowly, his face covered in cold sweat. He reflects deeply on the situation, knowing that information must never reach those two specific organizations. The temple is led by an obsessive archbishop who spends his entire life hunting down anything related to the ancient hero. And the underworld was originally established by one of the hero's close companions, growing over 50 years into a terrifying global power. Patrick grinds his teeth, knowing that unlike the lazy high nobility, those two factions possess the raw intelligence to realize that Lion's sudden burst of power is connected to the hero. And the absolute most dangerous part of this secret is that in reality, Lion is indeed directly connected to the hero. The first undeniable piece of evidence was that legendary cosmic recovery potion Lion brewed, and the second piece of evidence is happening right now. The massive, castle-shaking crisis only started the exact moment Lion stepped into the trial chamber where the hero's ancient treasure was stored. There is clearly some massive secret regarding Lion's soul that even Lion himself does not know. Patrick swears to keep the secret hidden at all costs, but a sudden, violent rumbling sound shakes the stone floor beneath their feet. The massive double doors of the library start vibrating violently, brilliant purple light spilling through the cracks. Patrick yells at everyone to draw their weapons and brace themselves as a massive, overwhelming wave of ancient energy pours out from the gateway. A swirling cosmic rift opens on the face of the doors, and with a sharp, projectile sound, a small white object shoots out of the vortex and hits Patrick directly in the face. The entire room goes dead silent. Lixel stands there, completely frozen, as Patrick stands rigid, steam practically pouring from his ears as he vibrates with pure, unadulterated grandfatherly rage. Lixel slowly reaches down, picking up the small, neatly folded paper airplane that just sniped his grandfather's nose, realization dawning on him that it is a handwritten note.